and your blessings over us. Thank you that you are able to bring hope through even the toughest of times, strengthening us for your purposes. Thank you for your great love and care. Thank you for your mercy and grace. Thank you that you are always with us and will never leave us. Thank you for your incredible sacrifice so that we might have freedom and life. Forgive us when we don't thank you enough for who you are, for all that you do, for all that you have given. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you, Commissioner Weems. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections?
Make a motion to accept the agenda as submitted.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second to approve the agenda as submitted. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. So, as far as public service announcements, we want to thank all of our staff for this weekend's support for the flooding conditions that occurred. We hope that citizens were able to go to the different locations to get sandbags if they needed them. It appears that we didn't have a whole lot of issues, but just want to send our thoughts and prayers out to all those up and down the East Coast that were victims of Hurricane Ian, and we still are suffering the effects. My daughter lives in Hilton Head, South Carolina. The hurricane landed 75 miles north of her, and it was over in about 8 hours at her house. And here we are 5 days later, still sitting in the clouds and the rain. So lucky us. That's all I have today under public service announcements. So the first item on the agenda is a proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Commissioner Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. And do we have some folks here for this proclamation? Just say your name and if you want to say anything, and then
They had to
come
make
on
it a
up.
little shorter for me. I'm Catherine Marsh. I'm the Vice Chair of the Commission for Women for Calvert County. And just wanted to highlight a few things as this is Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month. And that's statistically in this country, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men experience some form of intimate partner violence. When it comes to severe violence, that goes to 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men. 24 people every minute in this country suffer abuse in an intimate partner relationship. 1 in 4 children witness domestic violence in the home. And when we talk about how this impacts the community as a whole, intimate partner violence costs about 8 million paid workdays every year, which is the equivalent of 32,000 jobs a year in this country. So intimate partner violence is something that impacts this entire community, and we really appreciate the Board of County Commissioners recognizing the awareness for this month.
Come on up, Kat.
Hi, my name is Erin Wilkins, and I'm the Clinical Supervisor for Calvert Center for Change, which is our comprehensive sexual assault and domestic violence program. I'd like to share that we have started the Silent Witness Initiative, and those are on display right now at the Maine Health Department. They will be on display next week at our Lesby office. The 3rd week of October, they will be on display at the Fairview Branch Library, and then the 4th week, they'll be in the courtyard between Circuit Court and District Court. And we also have purple light bulbs available at the Prince Frederick Library and at the Maine Health Department if anybody would like to help us paint Calvert purple. Thank you.
My name is Melissa Colazzo. I also work for Calvert Center for Change. I am the program coordinator and group facilitator for the county's abuse intervention program. We are hosting with several other agencies on October 24th at 6 p.m. here in the courtyard, our candlelight vigil to recognize domestic violence. And we also have a rain-out date scheduled for the Thursday, October the 27th at 6 p.m. as well. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kalisa Marsh, and I'm the manager at Safe Harbor Domestic Violence Shelter, Prince Frederick, Maryland. This is my assistant manager, Rhonda. We just continue to work tirelessly, providing safety and security for victims and survivors fleeing domestic violence and their families. Unfortunately, within the last year, our numbers have increased, so we like to thank the commissioners for DV awareness. Thank you.
They're not politicians, they don't know to move up and get in the camera.
They just know how to do the work.
Oh, I see. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Bob Harvey. I'm Calvert County State's Attorney. Domestic violence remains the second most prevalent type of criminal case that we see in Calvert, apart from impaired driving. The last fiscal year that just ended in June 30th, we prosecuted 18 domestic violence cases in the circuit court. Those are felony cases, and 253 cases in the district court, which are the misdemeanors, for a total of 271 cases. I have with me today members of our domestic violence unit, Anthony Navellini, who is one of the attorneys in charge of the unit there. Elsie Cole, another attorney in the office, is our newest attorney doing domestic violence. I'm thrilled to announce that she recently, as of the last couple of days, received a scholarship to attend a conference in San Diego, breaking the cycle of domestic violence. So that's very exciting, and I thank the commissioners for creating the position that she now fulfills. We also have Allison Baker with us, who's a victim advocate in domestic violence. Homer Ridge, who's our dedicated investigator for domestic violence. And Joyce Jett, who is, everyone knows, is sitting in the back, who is an administrative assistant in our unit. So thank you all, commissioners, for your strong support, your lasting support for this vital program. Appreciate it.
So, before I read this, and, I'm sorry.
Do we want the rest of everybody else to come?
Yeah, come on up.
Guys, come on.
Whoever wants to. The only one that won't come up is Homer.
He's on the topic.
That's all right. You probably do that, don't you, Doc? There you go.
No, I want to arrange them. Can you
Okay, well,
come
I'm gonna read this to
forward
him first,
and
and then you can give him a snapshot.
Okay. I'll
So, unfortunately, we still keep having to have this. And this is 100% preventable. That's what's so sad about it all. And, you know, you guys hear it all, you know, and a lot of times the people think it's just affecting them. But those children remember it forever. It never goes away. And unfortunately, you guys see, hey there, young lady, how are you? That's all right. You know, it doesn't stop. You see it generationally, which means, you know, it's seen and it's accepted. And it just can't be accepted. And, you know, I know people are afraid because of, hey, I don't have another place to go. Financially, what do I do? All of these things, and it is scary. And, you know, if you're not standing in the middle of it, it's easy to say, hey, why aren't you just doing this? And you guys see the firsthand stuff. But at some point, where does it stop? You know, and I just implore anybody that's in this, if we're not providing the facilities, tell us. Tell us what you need. Because it's got to get better, and you see the numbers are getting worse. It has to stop. It's 100% preventable, and, you know, so it's just, it's heartbreaking. It really is. There's no excuse for it. So with all that said, I'll read this for you folks. It says, whereas the Commission for Women and Center for Change work to end domestic violence in Calvert County through education, awareness, community support, collaboration among individuals, community groups, law enforcement, and other governmental agencies, while working to help survivors of domestic violence realize they are not alone, need not suffer in silence, but speak out, and can join together to support each other, heal wounds, and rebuild their families. Whereas the Commission for Women and Center for Change are sponsoring a Domestic Violence Awareness Month event in partnership with Calvert County State's Attorney's Office and the Calvert County Courts on October 24th, 2022. And whereas domestic violence can affect anyone from all racial, ethnic, national origin, sexual orientation, economic, age, religious, social groups, it damages the health, economics, and well-being of our community and hurts those we love the most. And whereas although assistance remains available, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to increased social distancing, which often prohibits others from recognizing when people are being exposed to family violence and limits their ability to intervene and provide aid. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Calvert County that October 22nd be known as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Calvert County. Be it further proclaimed that we urge all citizens to actively support efforts to end domestic violence and prevent harm from all those who live within our communities. Give it under our hands and seal this fourth day of October 22nd, signed by all commissioners.
Hey, can the four of you pass them? I'm like loving the purple. Bring the purple forward. All right, and then let's try to come in during that. Aaron, if you can just kind of go in between. Yeah. Perfect. Yep. Joan, will you come over? Yeah, I'm gonna put you in the center. Just come up a little, right there. That's it. Oh, you can go back there. Just be in the front, right there. That's it. Okay.
Okay.
That's better.
You're making my job easy, thank you. All right, everyone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much.
So is there a phone number somebody can call to report domestic violence?
Yes,
What is it?
1-877-467-5628. It's 24/7.
Oh, hold on, guys. I'm trying to get to all you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Buddy, my son, too. Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you all for what you do. Thank you.
I know. My husband has
Did we get everybody? Yes. Okay. All right, Bob. Good seeing you as always. Thank you.
So just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for what you do. As Commissioner Hart, some of us just don't understand how this happens, but you know, the impacts are significant. And if you didn't catch it, there is a number. If you are a victim of violence, or if you see violence, you have an obligation to report that. And that number you can call is 1-877-467-5628, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, if you see it, you need to report it before it's too late. Too many times we hear people say, well, I should have done something, but I didn't. You have an obligation and an opportunity, and we have lots of resources out there to help you. We will do whatever we can to help you through this. So I'll give that number out again later. But again, I want to thank all of you for what you do to support the victims of domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next proclamation is for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Commissioner Gadway.
Thank you, sir. Come on up, Tech Services. Stop at the mic, introduce yourself, and tell us something about cybersecurity, please.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kat Poff. I'm the Acting Deputy Director for Technology Services and the Cybersecurity Manager. And just like death and taxes, Cybersecurity Year comes along every year. And this year's theme is See Yourself in Cyber. And to me, Cybersecurity Month is every month. But what we're trying to stress this year is that cybersecurity is everyone's obligation. Everyone can help with cybersecurity. We can have the most sophisticated equipment But it all comes down to the users sitting at the desktop. And there are so many easy things that we can do, and we'll be highlighting that this month. And we have a couple things planned, so everybody just watch and we'll be there.
Thank you, Kat. Go ahead, come on up.
I'm Stephen Pereira, Director of Technology Services. As you're well aware, cybersecurity is now part of modern warfare. Being cyber aware has never been more important now than before. We're in a constant state of alert. We're constantly improving our training. Just this weekend, we had a 0 hours attack based on Microsoft Exchange, which Kat and William dealt with on Saturday. This month we'll be doing phishing campaigns because, believe it or not, despite having a state-of-the-art defense system, most attacks come through phishing. 90% you're clicking on a link and it's dead easy to do. Or weak passwords. So it's important to have good, strong length passwords. Try to pick passphrases as opposed to simply a few random letters. I also just want to acknowledge the hard work that Kat does, being recognised in a field and staying up to date with all of the latest qualifications and trainings and news. The county is in very good hands under Kat's cyber leadership. Thank you.
Stephen, please talk about your interaction with the other counties.
We've also just recently set up a tri-county cyber security committee. So we're looking to work closely with St. Mary's and Charles County, just to share resources and just to understand better what each other's doing so that we can maybe share some of our best practices. I believe that we're doing exceptionally well, and our independently verified security scorecard recently gave us 93 out of 100. So we are doing exceptionally well, but that doesn't mean to say we can't get better. And the fact that we're doing incredibly well doesn't mean that we should be resting on our laurels, because, as I said before, 90% of attacks come through phishing, and those are just those emails that you see that come out and say, hey, you'll never believe what I just saw of you, or it might be an email from your boss or something, and you'll click on that link and that's it, the hackers are into your system. So working with other counties, we can share best practices, find out what they're doing, potentially share resources and other things. So it's an exciting time for TS in cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Cybersecurity goes, I remember 20 years ago or a couple decades ago, I remember the worst thing that would happen on the computer if you clicked on something, it all of a sudden just start popping up a bunch of ads. Those days are gone. Today it's malicious. Today it's life altering. It's changing. They'll empty your bank accounts. Who knows all the different stuff that can happen from inadvertently clicking on something on an email. Just last year, you guys sent an email out. Well, I didn't know it was you guys, but you guys sent an email out and it looked totally legit. It looked like it came from somebody, and I clicked on it. All of a sudden my screen went red and the skull and crossbones came up on it, and then it went and it said this was a test and you failed. So everybody can be a victim of it. I've tried to tell people, if somebody sends you an email that just doesn't quite seem right, don't click on it. Call them. If you didn't expect to get an email from that person, pick up the phone and call them. If they're asking you on email, hey, can you help me out with X, Y, and Z? If it doesn't seem right, pick up the phone and call that person. If you know them, call them. If you don't know them, get rid of the email. So people you don't know, they don't need your help with resetting passwords or clicking on things. So it's a big deal, and it's scary how good or bad, depending on which way you look at it, some of these people are getting and these hackers are getting. So like you said, 90% I think you said was from phishing, and what's the definition of phishing again?
phishing is sending out an email that looks legitimate but gets the user to click on something that could take them to a site that might take their banking credentials or their login credentials, then that's a way to get into our network. So just anything like that. Also, it can download Trojanware or viruses or malware on your machine just by clicking on the link.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any other comments from either of you before I read the proclamation? Okay. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners recognizes it has a vital role in identifying and protecting its citizens from and responding to cybersecurity threats which may have a significant impact on our individual and collective safety and privacy. And whereas cybersecurity, education, and awareness are crucial for everyone, including large corporations, small businesses, financial networks, schools, government agencies, the home user, and anyone who connects to the internet, be it with a computer, mobile phone, or other internet-connected device. Monitoring your accounts, being conscientious of what and who you share online, keep computer software up to date, creating unique passwords, changing passwords regularly, and installing antivirus programs and firewalls are all ways for people and organizations that can protect themselves from phishing, viruses, ransomware, malware, financial loss, and loss of sensitive data. And whereas we showcase a need to inspire, engage, and inform the public about the demand, opportunities, and career options available within the area of cybersecurity. Building the cybersecurity workforce enhances the nation's security and promotes economic prosperity. And whereas the See Yourself in Cyber campaign serves as a national cybersecurity public awareness campaign implemented through a coalition of private companies, nonprofit, government organizations, and academic institutions working together to increase the public's understanding of cyber threats and empowering Americans to be safer and more secure online. Maintain the security of cyberspace is a shared responsibility in which each of us has a critical role to play. Awareness of essential cyber hygiene will improve the security of Calvert County government's information, infrastructure, and economy. And whereas the federal government of the United States of America, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, also known as CISA, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the National Association of State Chief Information Officers, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance all recognize October as Cybersecurity Awareness Month. All citizens are encouraged to visit these websites and the See Yourself in Cyber campaign website at CISA.gov Cybersecurity Awareness Month to learn about cybersecurity, to put that knowledge into practice in their homes, schools, workplaces, and businesses. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Calvert County that October be recognized as National Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2022 in Calvert County. Be it further proclaimed that all citizens and employees are urged to join in increasing awareness and understanding during the month of October and throughout the year. Given under our hands and seal this 4th day of October 2022. Signed by all commissioners.
All right, now you all are used to this. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Lovely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is appointments. We have one, and normally Deputy Administrator Linda Vasallo takes care of appointments, but she's at home recovering from knee surgery, but she is watching, so we want to wish her a speedy recovery. So we have two appointments for the Sheriff's Office Pension Plan Board of Trustees. Due to a resignation, we have a suggested appointment of William Richter as employee representative for the Calvert County Sheriff's Office, and we have a reappointment for Joshua Underwood.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Second?
I have a motion and a second that we appoint William Richter as the Calvert County Sheriff's Office employee rep, and that we reappoint Joshua Underwood. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Oh my gosh. We are 4 minutes ahead of schedule, so we're going to be 40 minutes behind for the public hearing based on the next item on the agenda, and I can't find anything short to do, so.
New business?
Okay. All right, if we think we can do new business item 1, Department of Planning and Zoning Historic Preservation Tax Credits. Chris, how are you?
Doing well, sir. How are you?
Good.
Morning.
Well, thank you.
Morning.
Christopher Sperling, Historic Preservation Planner, Department of Planning and Zoning. I'm here today in regards to Historic Preservation Tax Credits TC 2020-04, TC 2021-01, and TC-2022-01, all for Patuxent Manor Historic District. Calvert County offers a 25% tax credit for eligible restoration work done on structures located within designated historic districts or designated historic landmarks by the county or municipalities. The county's tax credit program is described in Chapter 136 of the Code of Calvert County. Patuxent Manor was designated a Calvert County Historic District by the Calvert County Board of County Commissioners via county resolution in 1974 under case HD 1974-01, making it the first property designated a historic district for Calvert County. Patuxent Manor is located at 3825 Lower Marlboro Road, Owings, Maryland. Is shown on Tax Assessor's Map 10 as Parcel 25 and is zoned as a historic overlay. It is owned by William and Mary Whittle Clevenger. Between April 2020 and March 2022, Mr. and Mrs. Clevenger submitted 3 separate historic area work permits and preliminary tax credit applications to the Historic District Commission for labor and materials. These consist of TC 2020-04 for the replacement of the front porch, TC 2021-01 for repair of the rear porch, and TC 2022-01 to replace siding on an addition. The preservation activities detailed on all 3 tax credit applications were conducted concurrently and completed in 2022. In September 2022, the Clevengers submitted proof of payment to their contractor for the eligible expenses in the amount of $10,696.72 for a tax credit 2020-04, $7,231.14 for tax credit 2021-01, and $14,399.87 for tax credit 2022-01, for a combined total of $32,327.73. And documented satisfactory completion of the work, meeting with the reporting standards set by the HDC. The HDC reviewed the documentation at their September 14, 2022 meeting and voted unanimously on each tax credit application to submit the request to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. The documents, which are attached, have been incorporated into the permanent file on the Patuxent Manor Historic District in the Department of Planning and Zoning. Fiscal impact. The property tax bill for 3825 Lower Marlboro Road, tax account number 02-109697, will be reduced by $2,674.18 for tax credit 2020-04, $1,807.79 for tax credit 2021-01, and $3,599.97 for tax credit 2022-01 for a combined total of $8,081.94. Recommendation. The HDC recommends that the BOCC approve each of the 3 tax credits for a combined total of $8,081.94, which is 25% of the eligible expenses. I can take any questions if you have them now.
No, I think we're good, Chris.
Sir?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the 3 tax credits for Patuxent Manor for a combined total of $8,081.94.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we approve the 3 tax credits for Patuxent Manor for a combined total of $8,081.94. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So now it's 10:31, we can have our public hearing. Department of Technology Services, extension of Workday project. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Pereira, Director of Technology Services. There is one public hearing scheduled for today. All hearings were duly advertised, and the certified publication is made part of the record of each hearing. Citizens were invited to provide comment on any or all of the hearings, and each presentation has concluded. Each of the hearings may have a separate comment period following their brief presentation. Anyone here in person must sign in on the sheet next to the attorney to speak. I'll read the memo. Background. The Department of Technology Services, Finance and Budget and Human Resources are currently in the process of implementing Workday, the new financial human resources management application. Workday is a one-stop for employee data, compensation, recruiting, training, and finance information. Workday is a cloud-based solution which will replace and integrate functions of current applications, including ExecuTime, NeoGov, and FinPlus when fully implemented. Discussion. The timeline for deploying Workday will need to be extended to allow for addition of the Sheriff's Office and Marine Museum processes to be added to the Workday application, the revisiting of financial design decisions and changes in integration services, particularly the foundation data model. To maximize the benefit of the project extension, out-of-scope activities including adaptive insights, Workday recruiting, post-production support services, electronic tax filing and forms have been added at a minimal cost. This will extend the project from the original date of January 27th, 2023 to May 19th, 2023. Fiscal impact. The fiscal impact of this action in FY23 is $562,752.50, or 2,925 hours. The budget adjustment will increase expense account 020-27515 technology services, contracted services, and increase revenue account 00136-07005 use of prior year fund balance. Conclusions and recommendations. Staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners close the record, approve BA #077, which uses prior year fund balance as the funding source for the project extension, and sign the attached resolution. Coordination, Office of the County Attorney. Do you have any questions?
It's my understanding that this actually could be a cost benefit, a savings benefit. Is that the case? Although we're spending the money on it because of the technology, it's going to end up saving money and saving the taxpayers money in the end?
Yes, improved processes, for example, an improved payroll system has the potential to save citizens as much as 7% on staffing costs. So a more accurate payroll system will rule out human error and decrease costs for the county.
I always like to look at the whole picture and see the savings on the back end after you spend the money, so thank you.
There'll also be numerous other savings through time and efficiency. People will have the opportunity to stop doing mundane data entry tasks and create value elsewhere within the county government organization.
Thank you.
So for the public out there that listening in, could you, one of you, explain sort of what Workday does?
Sure, I can touch on that. My name's Colin Robbins. I'm one of the system analysts on the applications team, and I'm leading the project on the Calvert side. So for the public aspect, touching on kind of what Stephen was saying, the part that they're probably going to see the most would be from the recruiting, from people seeing and applying for jobs. That is something that we added into the project a couple weeks ago that we now can fit inside with the timeline as mentioned by Stephen, going with our new go live date in accordance with everything else that we're going with. So they would see a new front portal page. They would see a more up-to-date process of getting and applying, scheduling interviews, things of that nature. That's mainly what they're probably going to see on the public side. I think other than that, most of the other stuff is touching on to what Stephen mentioned internally. Now with the addition of the sheriff's office, a lot of these systems and now are all going to be covering the whole county in a now new parallel process. So everything's going to be a one-stop shop with one process that is unified policy, procedure, and data-wise, which is a massive win.
Right. Director Woodson.
Good morning, Melanie Woodson, Human Resources Director. So just for the commissioners to understand some of the things that are going to be enhanced with the implementation of Workday, there are a lot of things that we just don't have the capability to do right now. So there will be increased reporting, increased transparency. There will be streamlining of time and attendance entry. We will also be able to have a direct organizational chart that's maintained within Workday. So we have the ability to track who supervisors are, who's responsible for conducting performance evaluations. We will have a multi-tier time approval. There will also be alerts directly to the county administrator when overtime is being authorized. So it will allow us to actually make Chapter 86 work within a computer system, which is actually a manual process right now. And as Stephen mentioned before, there's a lot of room for error when everything is being done manually.
So I just wanted the public out there to understand the benefit of this program when they see us spending over $500,000 on implementation. You know, and it was stated, you know, the history shows that people that implement this program generally save at least 7% on salary savings. So for us, we should be able to pay for the program in a year or two, Director Strand?
So currently, the Workday is a subscription-based product, so we'll be paying a subscription fee going forward. Again, this does streamline processes, just not from a payroll standpoint. This streamline processes throughout the county and how things are processed, and the workflows will be built in for approvals. So we're anticipating that we will have time savings and more accurate information. And part of the delay or the extension of this product is just to make sure that this product is built properly from the ground up. Typically, in talking with Stephen, the director, this usually could be done over a 2 to 3 year period. This build out of Workday in the county is doing it in less than a year. So this 3-month extension is just making sure that everything is built properly, so we're not having to go back and make additional changes. There's a bigger lift than we originally anticipated, and TS has been great to work with for the finance and budget needs of the information that we've needed to gather. So I appreciate their help and input.
When do you guys see it going online?
The go-live date is March 27th, 2023.
Excellent. We look forward to it. Well, if we have a motion to approve it.
So the floor has, Mr. President, there is somebody online.
Okay.
Nobody has signed up to speak. If the virtual caller would like to speak, please press *9. Last four digits 3020. Please press *9 if you'd like to speak during this public hearing. So no. No one signed in and nobody has indicated their desire to speak virtually.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Gentlemen? Yes, sir. Commissioner Gadway.
I move that we close the record and approve and adopt resolution enacting budget adjustment number BA077, please.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we close the record, approve and adopt resolution enacting budget adjustment BA077. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank
We're
you,
going to look
Commissioners.
forward to this rollout in March. Next item on the agenda is a work session with Department of Planning and Zoning. Good morning, Director.
Good morning.
Directors.
Morning, Commissioners. Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning. Joining me today, first up, is Carrie Dahl from the he is the Director of Public Works, and we will have various other staff joining us later to discuss their parts of the Adequate Public Facilities update. The current adequate public facilities are contained in the Calvert County zoning ordinance in section 7-105, and it's currently only written for roads and schools. I'm not going to read the excerpt from 7-105, but that's kind of a summary of how we do it today. The adequate public facilities were adopted in 1988 and were first housed in the subdivision regulations from 1988 to 2002, and then were moved to the zoning ordinance in 2003 to present. Amendments for adequate public facilities for schools were done in 2003, 2008, and 2018. Minor edits have been done for roads. Currently, the adequate public facilities for schools only applies to residential development, but the update will, since we're going to be including so many new topics, will be expanded to include non-residential developments such as commercial, industrial, and institutional. The purpose of these amendments are as a result of the 2019 Comprehensive Plan action to expand adequate public facilities regulations to include sewer, water, storm drain, solid waste, public safety, and the Sheriff's Office. While we were talking about the updates, we felt that there was a need to also include parks. We are proposing to remove the adequate public facilities regulations from the zoning ordinance because so many different departments will be involved and adopted into the Calvert County Code. Any new regulations adopted as part of this update will become part of the development review process. If any one of the existing or proposed categories is found to be inadequate during that review, the development cannot start construction until capacity has become adequate. So first up is the adequate public facilities for schools. So currently, the regulations specify that schools are adequate when all public, elementary, and secondary schools that are serving a residential subdivision or residential development, which would mean townhouses, apartments, et cetera, will accommodate the pupil yield from that residential subdivision or development without exceeding 100% of the rated capacity of any of those schools. A report is published twice a year in the spring and the fall, listing the current rated capacity of each school in Calvert County. If any school exceeds 100%, major subdivisions, which is 7 or more lots, cannot be recorded in that school's district for 6 years, unless the capacity becomes available in one of the next reports that come out.
So there's going to be no change. We're proposing no change to this analysis with the public facilities for schools.
And do we currently have an area that's impacted by that provision?
Yes, the northern portion of the county, I'm not remembering which school district, but I do believe it's where Beach Elementary and Northern High School are. I believe they're closed.
You know, Mayor, it's my concern, you know, on the past board, you know, we were asked to, could we increase that? And we said no. You know, that 6 years goes by and it puts it back on us.
It does.
And at that point, I still go back to, why is the taxpayer responsible for, you know, this? And I just, I mean, I see the 6-year thing, but to me, 100% is 100%. You know, why have a caveat where a guy goes, okay, I'll push it to the limit, and then I'll wait my 6 years, and then you're forced to have to accommodate me.
So the 6 years was chosen because it follows our CIP process for capital improvements. So if the need is felt that there are enough students in the county for an additional school, that could be put in the CIP.
And I
and
get
built.
that, but I almost feel like we have we're obligated in 6 years to accommodate this. And you know, what if it's a multi-million-dollar road? Each school we know is anywhere from $30 to $45 million, and as that cost keeps escalating, so I don't like feeling obligated that, you know what, if there, you know, I mean, what changes in 6 years? We could be in a worse financial picture in 6 years, and now we're forced to do a project because of excessive growth.
Isn't there some legal guidelines about
Yes.
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, John Norris, County Attorney. There are court cases that have found 6 to 7 years are the maximum extent that you can use regulations to deny reasonable use of the property without triggering a taking of the land under the Constitution.
And the 6 years is to give us time to address that issue that was raised. And as the attorney says, legally, we can't hold a project up forever because we don't.
Question about the 100%. It's my understanding, please correct me, I wasn't here at that point, but when Northern was built, or not built, but remodeled or rebuilt, the day that it opened, it was over 100% capacity?
That's very possible.
Because we're only allowed to build up to 100%.
Yeah, the state only allows, right.
So if we're only allowed to build up to 100%, and we spend, I don't know how much was, how many dollars was Northern. If we had to redo that today, it'd probably be $40-50 million building at least.
Oh, just our piece.
Yeah.
I think the cost was around, what, 70 at the time? Is that accurate?
I thought it was 80.
Could be, yeah.
Not that this is an auction.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, yeah, that was years ago, but.
You know, but having the 100% out there without exceeding 100% of the capacity, but yet if we build a school and we're only allowed to build it to 100%, how would that ever, I don't understand how that would ever work. Because if we go out and spend all the money to rebuild or build a school, and the day we open the doors, we're already at or over the 100%.
Because they expect you to build another one.
And they add portable trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
accommodate.
so you either add temporary space or you could redistrict if the rest of the school system is not at 100%.
But that would require the Board of Ed doing the redistricting, correct?
You could argue, a lawyer would argue that you have an opportunity to make adjustments.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And if I may, and I have the distinct, I guess, pleasure or deference to speak candidly, the adequate public facilities ordinance does not exist in the beaches.
That's correct. They have their own zoning in both North Beach and Chesapeake Beach.
So Beach Elementary, for example, and I'm not picking on the school system. In fact, I just want to put some perspective to it all. It's just like the numbered roads. We can't control that. With 2 weeks ago, the discussion on the roads. The State Highway Administration administers all numbered roads. So for those who will be here, you need to remember that I'm looking at a gentleman in the back who potentially could be here next year. Little nuances like that, though.
Sure, so any development that happens within the town limits would not count against they're not going up against an analysis for adequate public facilities until we account for them for the school capacity.
Right.
So they can record their developments at any time.
And not to take, I say not to take the discussion too far the other way, but we've already seen sewer issues in some of these areas, and it's all relative, right? It all comes back around. So, it's just, boy, Commissioner Nutter told me years ago, you touch something over here and boy, you affect it over there. And I just don't like that, that mandate, and I obviously, I guess there's nothing we could do about that, I guess, Attorney?
So without providing a full dissertation on inverse condemnation and such, there does need to be a relief valve where the public is responsible enough to provide the resources for the growth that you've said you're willing to accept. Does that mean you can't change density? No, you can change density. You can change other requirements so there's less growth to manage. You cannot redistrict schools. You cannot step into the municipalities and tell them how to regulate their jurisdictions where they've already occupied that field. But there is a public responsibility to provide resources in a timely manner for the growth that you're going to allow.
Correct.
Okay,
You can continue on.
up next is Carrie with roads.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie Dahl, Director of Public Works. Okay, so this is probably the most recent one. This is updated language from the last time that you have seen this. As you've seen, you've had the traffic engineer come in and try to explain where we are with and how we come up with the data. If you look at the current, that's what it currently says. I'm going to bounce back and forth here just for the simple fact that that's current, okay? Maintaining a level C. Town centers where a D is rating is essentially acceptable, okay? And then state roads is a level D. Now I'm going to bounce forward here to inadequacy. So projected level of service for road segments and intersections within the traffic impact study area for the proposed project is ERF, according to the Department of Public Works by the state as applicable. So we're putting the threshold up there as that being inadequate. So I'm going to bounce back now, and some of the things that I would like to propose language to incorporate there is talk about the approach lanes and the roadways, something that you had mentioned and brought up and spoke to him about putting those into the assessment for the actual, the level of service for those roads. And also using that highway capacity method is probably the most accurate way of doing that. And at the end of the day, we're talking about if it's going to be projected for a D or worse than a D, then we want to make sure that we're going to keep that level of service at a D after the development is completed, if you're following me.
Go ahead.
I know we talked a couple weeks ago about this, and whenever I was in school, I don't like D's, E's, or F's. And I still don't like them today when we're talking about roadways and everything else. Even this morning, coming through Prince Frederick to go back to the unsynchronized lights, coming south from Huntingtown to here, I got 5 red lights coming through Prince Frederick. I know I got bad luck, but as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, I like C or better across the board.
Understood, sir.
And I gotta concur with Commissioner Gadway.
And gentlemen, I totally agree with what you're saying. I only get to impact the county roads. I don't necessarily get to impact the state roads.
Right.
So, and some of that traffic is actually on the state roads. But what I want to go to is this, okay? So I'll go back to the next stage let's talk about. Impact studies. If you look at the Calvert County Road Ordinance Appendix 20-1, okay, it actually has a trigger in there for when, you have to do a traffic study. We talked about it as a group after we met with you, and we're going to change the language in parallel to what we're doing with the Adequate Public Facilities here and go from 400 counts to 250 counts to actually trigger more studies. So when we bring in a smaller development, what you're actually doing is you're going to actually trigger a traffic study that would normally not be triggered unless it exceeded a 400 count threshold. So
And
we're
what's that
actually
400 or 250 count mean?
the number.
Average daily traffic,
Yeah.
ADT.
Right. And it's going to allow you to get more input onto what's actually happening with that development. So if you have a smaller development going in and it hits 251, well, they're required to do a traffic study for that period.
But that's irrelevant if every study comes back and says there's no impact. Just asking for the study, it's the parameters of the study is what's important. As Commissioner Gadway said, when I went to school, I better not bring a D home. And so why would we tell the citizens of this county that D is acceptable?
And I'm with Commissioner Hans, so if I understand this, okay, it triggers the study. And the study comes back and says, okay, you're gonna have 300 cars, 400 cars. Does that kill the project?
Can I assist?
Please.
Potentially, hopefully,
Maybe,
Yes, sir.
maybe.
definitely maybe.
Are we talking about minor subdivisions, the categorical
No, this would only affect major subdivisions.
major subdivisions?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think to answer Commissioner Hart's question, it wouldn't necessarily kill the project, it would require mitigation.
Right, so here we go so now you say, okay, I'm gonna put in an acceleration lane, a deceleration lane, whatever it takes, but I'm still having to get to that one artery, which the only one there is Route 4. And at that point, I know we don't have any control over that, so really,
But we do have control over making it worse or allowing it to be made worse.
we are making it worse, but we don't have any control of Route 4 saying, okay, you can't put more on that. But if we say, okay, well, you can build this up to where you can get the traffic out from there, you're still dumping it to another spot. You just moved one problem to another. So now you just overloaded one area.
So Stokely Road, we all talk about Stokely Road intersection. I guess what we're trying to get at is that if a project comes up on Mallard Point Road, that project is going to impact the intersection at Stokely Road. I guess I think that where we're trying to go is how do we capture that in the study? Because currently that's not captured. The only thing that's captured in the study is the impact that that project has when it enters Mallard Point Road. And I think what we're trying to do is capture the impact that that's going to have once that traffic intersects with a numbered road that we don't have impact on, except that we're adding capacity by the actions that we take on our county roads. So I hope I'm going down the right
that's
path.
right.
Is that, we're making Stokely Road worse when we approve these projects that at their intersection say there's no impact. So how do we capture the outreach of those projects and impacts that they have on those intersections that we already have issues on is, I think, what we're trying to get at.
I don't know if I have the answer today to provide that. but
And I'm not asking you to.
I think I need to go do some homework on this.
I'm just.
But I
In
think,
addition to what you were just saying, President Hans, is that Stokely Road intersection is affected, but so is Ward Road intersection in Dunkirk, and so is the Solomon's Bridge. Because of the layout of the county, you put one development in Prince Frederick, and it's going to affect every single intersection from the north end to the south end. To what extent, we don't know, but I do know that the traffic at Dunkirk and its bridge has progressively gotten a lot more over the last 2 decades. So it's clear that every development affects those 2 points and everything in between.
and I think to kind of put it in a real layman's type language, if you're doing something that the effect of that is going to cause harm, then it can't happen. And that's probably not something that some people want to hear, but there's been this mindset of, hey, well, that's your problem after that. But it's not. It's 90,000 people's problem, and it's the quality of life's problem, you know, and it goes so much more. I mean, we just said it. We've gone from schools to roads, you know, soon water and sewer are factoring into this. I mean, at what point do you say, we just can't handle anymore? You can't find anybody that says that they're happy with the traffic situation. So, I mean, sometimes you have to say no. I mean, you know, just in business. So in the line of business I'm in, it is very regulated, and there's a lot of rules to it. And the no's in there, 99% of those no's are for good reason. It's not that you're being not pro-business or this, that, and the other, but when the impact can overload your hospitals, your schools, your everything else, then how is it good for the community? I mean, you know, maybe it's good for a couple of people, but when you affect the 90,000 people, we've seen it, like we were saying last time, even on the weekends. Look at the level of traffic on the weekends. So
I just can't support anything
I mean,
that would be a D,
I,
E, or F.
if my 20%, I would want that if it fails any one of these APFs, then the project fails.
For 6 years.
Hmm?
For 6 years.
Well, now we go back to that. You know? And that's my big beef with the state, with this cookie cutter mentality. I mean, we have one road. Well, technically, what, 4 ways out? Well, Route 4 out of here and Route 2 out of here and 231. I mean, so we just don't have the infrastructure.
Based on the conversations we had with Mr. Rectanis when we were here, I know that there is probably some mitigation steps we could do now. And again, that's could be working with State Highway for light timing and all other stuff. We're gonna figure out what that, first of all, it's gonna cost something to make that happen, because we don't necessarily have the best systems available based on the conversations with him. But there is probably some, at least to diagnose and figure out what we could implement. And of course, then we would have to get on the list, if you will, of the priorities for the state to actually implement those. I think that's one thing that we could probably work on immediately right now and see if we can get in that list of priorities for them to make that happen. But,
John-
pardon me, sir.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when we start laying out these, because when I've looked at these across the board in other counties, and I'm not trying to say we're like other counties, but I've looked at counties the regular size that we are, Cs and Ds are an acceptable standard right now. And that's what they're using as thresholds. I very rarely run into a C mentality where that's the highest level of service that we're gonna run into. So I'm just saying, that's based on the research that we've done.
So John, let me ask you this. So okay, 6 years goes by, and now we have to take care of the situation, which it's always money. Is there a way to legally put in there, fine, if you force us to this, then you're gonna be financially responsible for the cost?
Well, you have your excise tax, which is
Yeah,
called
but that don't cover what
impact
this
fee.
stuff is.
But it could.
Okay, so you
But it
could
could.
put a special excise tax in for any project that exceeds our APF, and we are forced to go ahead and, I mean, you've got to have it so bad, you've got to build this monstrosity to put 5,000 more cars on the road, well, you're gonna pay for it.
Well, if I could, I've been through rewriting adequate public facilities ordinances half a dozen times. One of the things that is always tough to balance is the growth in your town centers to preserve your rural character and growth to support bond raters want to see a diversification of your tax base and continued commercial growth in your county.
And that's very true, John. I've met with them 7 times, and you know what they all say too? They don't want to see you exceed that.
Yes.
We've always been, so, hey, you're growing at the rate you can handle. So I know a lot of times that gets the fear factor in there, like, oh my gosh, you know, they want to see also, we're paying the bills, we're being responsible.
Yes.
You know, and also too, you've seen those folks, they're extremely intelligent. They see you start expanding to a level where like in the 90s, we'll lose that AAA bond rating, just like that.
That could happen. So there are ways to structure fees, allow them to mitigate their impacts. There are ways to require them to cover their impacts through a stronger excise tax. It doesn't have to necessarily just be for residential development, but you also have to have Julie's input, Ms. Oberg's input.
Is there a threshold on how big a percentage that can be?
I think there is. I'm not smart enough to know what that is, but I'm sure there is.
Okay.
Work to do on that one.
Okay.
Understood.
Yep.
Okay, public sewer, you've seen this before, but this language has been modified to basically put the inadequate capacity, the threshold we want to remain below. So right now, 90% is the maximum we'd ever want to see for any type of development. Keep it below there, and we'd be, unless, so if the facility or the wastewater treatment plant would go over with that development, then there has to be mitigation, obviously, by the development when it's put in.
I thought we talked about dropping that to 80%.
We talked about MDE's
Right,
schedule.
what was their-
80% threshold is when we have to start making a plan.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's what we talked, I don't think we talked about
Yeah, and it's
reducing-
3-year average too.
Right.
80% 3-year average, then you have to start making a plan.
Because that 80%, they figure that gives you time to make adjustments.
Correct. To come
Develop
up with a
and
plan to
implement that plan.
implement something that's gonna take on the capacity.
Right. But they don't want you over 90% either.
No, they
correct?
don't.
Right.
They probably would like us underneath 80 all the time.
So if they would like us underneath 80 all the times, why would we allow new developments to go in above 80?
Sir, we would like to maintain our capacity below 80, obviously, because then we're not required to trip and then actually do the modifications.
Right. But as we discussed earlier in the year, $50 to $70 million or something like that to put in a sewer pipeline from Prince Frederick to Solomons. I don't remember the exact amount, and expand
We
that.
know that that's not gonna happen, sir.
Right, but I'm just saying that was one of the possible outcomes or ways to increase the sewer capacity throughout Central County, throughout Prince Frederick area and whatnot. We know that that's not gonna happen, which means that we're limited on trying to figure out what to do with the Prince Frederick area and allowing developments to get us to a critical 90% usage. To me, I'd like, if the state wants us to start making plans at 80% and we're at 71% now, give or take that 71 is what I heard, that's the last number I heard, I'd be perfectly fine with dropping that APF for the sewer below 90% if that's gonna help us in the long run. Maybe not to 80, maybe 85%. But if we're already having to make plans and it's gonna cost that much more to expand,
But you have to also understand that the capacity issue, growth capacity of the plants grows very slowly. You're not gonna make huge jumps in capacity based on particular projects. It takes a long time to get that capacity up.
I think when we were looking at it before, 1% was equal to 100 and, just over 100 residential,
I
something like that.
recall. I would have to go back and look at
Okay.
my notes, sir, on that.
Director,
But, sir,
would you characterize this proffering as standard procedure in other
I would,
jurisdictions?
and because it's actually less than what most people have.
Okay.
Excuse, when I say 90%, I've seen it where it's 95, okay, and they're calling it inadequate. So we did one better, and, because before we walked you in, what was adequate, what was approaching inadequate, and then we told you what inadequate was. We had a discussion that 90 is a better number than 95, because some people take it all the way up to the threshold at 100%. But we felt that based on this area, that we did not want to go there.
One thing we have to understand too, we're in an area that we have the nuclear plant, the LNG facility, the Navy base, Andrews. We have a lot of huge employers, which that attracts people. So we're going to have to be very careful. You know, there are some areas in the country that are losing people You know, they don't have this problem up here at all because people are leaving. So we're gonna have to be very aware that there are outside entities that are attracting people and saying, hey, come on. We don't have to worry about getting people here. I mean, but what we do have to worry about is what do we do when it happens? And that's where we're already seeing it. If we're already seeing it now, just natural growth from here. I mean, what are we gonna be? Somebody up here said, you see what 1% did or 2% on the roads here. We can't handle. So, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but every one of these slides we're going to go to, all is affected the same way. And that's why I say that I don't like that 6 years, but if that 6 years is what the law of the land is, then they need to pay for it.
Have you seen any, we were talking about other jurisdictions being rated, using that rating above 90%. Have you seen any use ratings below the 90%?
No, sir, I've not.
So we'd be a trendsetter, in other words?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
I've tried to look, I think I've looked at like, I don't know, a dozen counties. Some of it don't even mention the percentage.
Well,
The fact that we're identifying it is probably above and beyond most counties. And what I tried to do is enumerate it so it was easy to figure out when you're actually doing it, as far as like the development side of it.
Right.
Some of them, language was walked around the issue, but not really stating a number. So there's no way to actually grab onto that and say, well, yeah, that's what we think it should be. So that's why I've actually used hard numbers instead of, talking our ways around it.
And considering we don't have any APF for public sewer at this point, I'm clearly 100%. Let me back off that percentage. Let me eliminate that percentage. I am absolutely in support of having the APF for public sewer. If it ends up being 90%, okay, I'd prefer it to be a lower amount, but I think we absolutely need to have it in. Like you said before, we weren't even addressing it. Now we're addressing it.
Correct. All right.
Sir. Commissioners, if I may, Mark Willis, County Administrator, I think we need to draw a distinction between who's paying for what here as we move forward, because there are going to be some tough decision making as we go forward. When you're talking about the roads, certainly the roads are going to be paid for by all citizens. When you're talking about either sewer or the next slide is public water, it's actually the users of the system that pay for that. They either pay for that in advance by their equivalent dwelling unit or their tap fees that they pay up front, or they pay for the maintenance of it when they pay that quarterly maintenance fee. It's not the citizens of the county. It's not the everyday citizen that pays for it. In the past, that is true. The county commissioners did pay for infrastructure with taxpayers' money. They stopped that about 10 or 12 years ago when I became, not because I became the deputy director of public works over water and sewer, but during that time frame. They had paid to the tune of $8 million, and they've been collecting that money back from the users of the infrastructure ever since. It's not the taxpayers paying for this, it's the users of the system.
Correct. I forgot to highlight that. But yes, the customers that use the systems are the ones that are going to be paying for it. So, yes. Moving along to public water, same threshold. And we're talking about each system. So we have 19 systems in Calvert County, and we're measuring each one of those systems. So if a system gets to a threshold of 90%, we want to stay below that. And again, that's in line with what most counties are using. And again, we're enumerating as opposed to just giving a statement of what we believe to be adequate.
So, I'm trying to compare in my head water usage to sewage uses. Is there a comparison? We've talked about sewer capacity, it goes up very slowly. Does that correlate with water capacity also?
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question, to tell you the
And I
truth,
don't know
sir.
if I'm framing my question correctly, to be honest, but
Okay.
I'm just in my head trying to figure out, 90%, it's the same number you're using for sewer. So is there a comparison between the growth, for,
Typically, it's based on the things that I've seen and that I've done, it's typically in line with one another, but I do believe that we have more water customers than we actually do sewer customers.
okay.
Okay, that's in the county. So, a lot of those water users, some of those water users are on septics, okay? So,
Is it easier to accommodate additional capacity for a water system than it is a sewer system?
I think it's involved in the actual permitting of that, and that's where I said where I'd probably have to get some guidance from some of my guys on how that permit is laid out. Normally, just like you have in the sewer business, there is a threshold that is built into actually the permit that where you could, once you hit that threshold, you can actually bump up and get additional capacity because it's built into the permit, or it's time to actually, as we talked about before, planning for additional capacity through that permit.
And we get that permit through MDE,
I believe so, yes, sir.
and then they control withdrawal over the entire aquifer.
Yes, sir.
So they look at that when they give you your permit to tell you how deep you have
Correct.
to go.
And you will get a briefing on that, I think on October 18th is the next time we'll be meeting, and you'll have the USGS come in and actually provide you the status of those aquifers during that time frame. I think that's the current schedule.
So does MDE track private well withdrawals?
Don't believe so. I don't know. I can find out for you.
You hear in the public concerns about the amount of withdrawal out of the aquifers,
Well-
and for us, I'm assuming most of that withdrawal was from private wells.
Which would be under the Environmental Health Department, a state agency who is
And
under.
I believe, I believe that they're going to talk about that when they come in and talk to you about that.
In 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioners, one point here is that if you're gonna pull 100,000 gallons of water out of the ground, you're not gonna necessarily treat 100,000 gallons at the sewer system. Some of that is pulled off with a secondary meter, or it's just used to wash your car. You're using that water, but you're not necessarily treating it. The U.S. Geological, they actually decide with MDE, they have test wells around the state, and actually around several states that impact the aquifer. They'll tell us when we can raise the amount of water we withdraw or not. I will say that for the private wells, the health department, I think they use an average on what one residential unit would pull out of the ground, but that's an estimate times that number. For all public wells, they know how much that is based on it running through a meter, and then they'll add a certain percentage to it because there's some lost along the way after the meter. But it is tracked as well as they can.
And it's like traffic, aquifers are huge, and we don't control, just because we limit withdrawal doesn't mean our neighbors 3 states from here are gonna take the same action. So it's a little complicated, like transportation. So we look forward to that presentation in a couple weeks.
Yes, sir. And this one here, sir, this is not much changed from the last time that you've seen it. It basically talks about conveying the water system before the development should be able to convey the same amount of water just like it would be if it was before the development was done. So basically, it cannot get any worse. I'll leave it at that.
So I am a little perplexed because a project has to control its stormwater. And when you look at that, you look at the impact it has on tributaries, correct? I'm just wondering how this is going to fit into an APF. That's what I'm trying to figure out in my head. You see where I'm going?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
So I think we have several that are like new categories that are like this, that it's things that they're already doing, but we're categorizing it in the adequate public facilities so that if for whatever reason they're not able to do it, then it's a reason to suspend the approval until they can meet that.
For the project.
Right.
But that would happen on the individual permitting process, not so much through APF, would it?
The AAPF is part of the development review process, so that's the time when they're submitting their stormwater management calculations, their storm drain calculations, so that would be reviewed before the plan gets approved, prior to submitting for permits.
You know what's amazing
Okay.
though, is it's easy to say, you can't, state of Maryland will say, okay, you're in the 1,000-foot critical area. You can't do this because it harms that environment. And I'm not pushing back on that. But, hey, you've got 6 years to build some superhighway that affects 90,000 people. Now tell me that makes sense. I mean, if you deem something's harmful, it's harmful. You know? I mean, you know, and all of this and all this money spent and all this is because we're already there. I mean, if this was 40 years ago, this conversation's not taking place, but we're already there. And then to be told that we could be forced to be like the rest of these jurisdictions. So, I think you guys know what my thing is through the rest of this presentation.
I actually didn't say ditto on the last one, that's all I was gonna say, but ditto on this one.
Continue on.
Yes, sir. Last one for us. I think the biggest change here that we've actually tied it to the transfer station in the language. We want to make sure that we're not exceeding 70% of the transfer station right now, because we're currently exporting our solid waste to a landfill. And right now, we'd like to keep it below 70%.
So once again, I'm going to ask you the same question. So how do we tie that to a project?
I'm trying to think. I got a brain stall here.
That's okay.
I know there are things that are tied to development that actually trigger, what is it,
It's all right.
my brain's not.
Today's
working
just a
right now.
work session.
I know, but
My brain's like yours.
there are fees that are, I'm trying to remember whether it's the development, wait a minute, there's a tax for the development for each housing unit, right?
That's the excise tax.
That's
There's
the
a
excise
solid
tax.
waste fee included in that.
So there is probably something that could be considered when we do a commercial, because right now I don't think the commercial is actually impacting or actually have any measured impacts when it's actually developed. Otherwise, it's going to create solid waste, but it's currently not put into any type of ordinance that we'd have them, we'll say, I'm at a loss for the words there. I
So all of
apologize.
our solid waste goes to the transfer station. I'm just trying to think through
Correct.
how this would work if it's part of APF. Your facility is at 75%. Are we gonna hold up a project for that factor? And then we would
Well,
have
if-
6 years to.
Right, if we're currently at 68%, then coming in, their projected impact is gonna be like 72%. Yes, we could probably slow that down and stop that until the transfer station is modified for increased workload.
Okay. All right, I'm just working through it
Yes,
just
sir.
like you are.
But we have not done anything to address actually the commercial side of that. We're talking about the residential and everything, but we haven't done anything with the commercial side, which is something we could consider.
Right. Because you do have the capacity to know, separate that,
Yes, sir.
to know where it's coming from.
Based on the haulers, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
I believe that was the
You're
last
done.
one. But-
Oh,
no, I'm
back
not
away
done.
slowly.
I just have to quit talking today, that's all.
Back away slowly.
Up next is public safety, and I have Jim Richardson here to
Yeah, he's there.
discuss their proposed changes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This seat's warm. Good morning, Commissioners.
It might get
It's
warmer.
actually, we call it hot, that's the hot
seat,
seat.
yes.
Yeah. Maybe air conditioned. We get an air conditioned chair. But
Jim Richardson, Division Chief for Fire Rescue EMS, Department of Public Safety. For Fire Rescue and EMS, the Fire and Emergency Services, obviously the response time is a critical factor in providing a reasonable expectation of service to the citizens. There are national standards. The rural nature demographics of our county are very unique in that we chose a benchmark of 10 minutes response time based on GIS mapping that was done to allow for response time from the stations given a speed limit plus 10 miles an hour factor, which is fairly conservative. And we're just about to the edge of all the response areas and overlapping with that. The idea would be, let me see which way, okay, oh, wrong way. So each fire and EMS company's first due area is a large portion of area, and we have 6 of those throughout the county. They are sectioned into sub-areas that we know as box areas. So say in the Prince Frederick Fire Department, Prince Frederick Rescue Squad's area, there's probably about 12 to 14 box areas, and they're in proportion to, they're well in proportion to size, and they're based on travel distances and travel routes to those areas. So we would propose that we would do a statistics to those response areas that would be by a 10-minute response time for ALS response and as well as BLS response. We're currently tracking this for not the sub areas but the larger box areas, and currently it's probably about 70% of the time that they're meeting these thresholds for EMS. I think that obviously the closer you are to the department, the closer the service is going to be provided. It's also in line with the idea that future development could impact the volume of need for service, and it could also be specific to the type of development. We talk about, say for instance, a nursing home or an Asbury type facility that would have a larger impact on that. Those would be looked at, and if we can't meet that, again, I followed the guidance of what's been before the 6-year CIP, but basically I think in a lot of cases it could be supplemental staffing, or my idea would be to continue to promote and encourage volunteer EMS to be able to support any growth. The other option is in some of these major facilities that would have a commercial ambulance could provide the service, so they would have options to be able to propose to do that. For fire, it's a twofold thing. One would be the response time within 10 minutes. That would be having a first arriving apparatus on the scene within 10 minutes. The other thing is we currently have in the Calvert County Code fire flow and duration to development. Those are already currently in place, but those would be amplified with the APF for fire response as well.
Jim, if I could go back to your EMT services.
Yes.
Would you say over the last 5 years calls have increased?
Yes, they have. I mean, we had a slow decrease, obviously because of COVID. People were encouraged not to go to the hospital. Most recently, we've seen a very significant increase. The demand is somewhat time-based, but the idea that we're having, it's multifaceted. I mean, we're having more complicated cases. The hospital stays are less. Patients are being released sooner. the level of training is higher, but also the number of incidents have increased as well.
So 5 years ago, did we have any paid crews?
No, we didn't.
How many do we have now?
We currently have, we have 4 ALS ambulances, 1 basic life support ambulance, and an EMS supervisor on 24/7.
What's the average cost to put a new team, say, on the road? Just ballpark.
I want to say probably 800,000. That's just staffing cost. Obviously, an ambulance fully equipped is probably, a new ambulance fully equipped is probably close to 500,000.
So it could be over $1 million to put a new crew, put an extra crew on the street?
That's approximately, yes.
I know I'm a broken record here, but, you know, we're just going back to, 40 years ago when I was a kid and nobody lived here, you know, it wasn't these growing pains. I mean, and I don't foresee services getting any less.
No.
So.
Commissioner Hart, we were the last county in the state of Maryland that was 100% volunteer, fire, rescue, ALS, BLS, everything. And we didn't lose volunteers.
No,
the
this
volunteers
is nothing
are
at
still
all
there.
against
The
volunteers.
volunteers are still doing their work, and
Yeah,
they're doing a
it's just the
phenomenal job
increase in
at it.
calls.
But with the increase in the calls and which comes from the increase in population and the growth in population, has mandated that we now have to have paid EMS. And on one hand, I'm happy to see the services being provided, and they were before, but I'm very happy that the people are getting the services they need. But on the other hand, I was sad to see that we had to go starting to implement the volunteers with paid staffing. And we're there, and it's going to get worse. So the more people you put in, the more draw there is on the system, and we are going to have to put in additional staffing at some point somewhere.
And the reality is, you get up, gas costs you more, groceries cost you more, everything costs you more. You don't want to see your taxes cost you more. There's only one way to pay for all these things. There is no other way, except for the tax base. And then I look at the taxpayer and say, why is it their responsibility to supplement all this growth? I just don't see a reason. The draining of the resources, the expense in it, the quality of life that suffers. I mean,
we can only ask so much for the volunteers, and they have delivered for decades and decades
Absolutely.
and decades, and they still do. And they do an amazing job.
they were out there last
at
night
it.
in my shopping center. I
Right.
mean, it was pouring down raining, it was cold, and Solomon's was out there last night. I mean, our volunteers are out there every day.
We have to give them the support that they need, and sometimes that support is backing them up by paid staffing. But as you mentioned, for every paid staff crew, you can figure another $1 million a year plus by the time you consider the equipment in there. So,
So,
thank you.
Jim, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Practically speaking, do you see how we would work this into the APF process?
I think that, again, would be, I mean, the idea would be is we're going to continue to press on retention of volunteers. Recruitment's not been a problem. Retention and keeping them in the system. And even if it's a rotation of bringing in new and we maybe have them for 3 to 4 years, Calvert County.
No, I get that part. My question is, if we include it under APF, a project comes in, what are the parameters that's going to determine that this is going to be a factor in whether it gets approved or disapproved? Is it you talk about response times. Is that going to be the parameter we're going to use, that this project could push that response time beyond what's acceptable?
Possibly, yes. I think, and you look for an objective standard to try to measure, and response time is really probably one of the only ones that you can, and they're based obviously on just not just response, but also the availability. So, for instance, in Solomon's, I jokingly say when I drive home south in the afternoon, if I don't see a Solomon's ambulance coming north to the hospital, I'm wondering what's going on, because every day, it's not unusual for them to have 3-4 calls stacked on top of each other.
But Jim, I think also besides response time, if you have a unit that holds 1,000 people, I mean, I think there's got to be a math equation there somewhere to go how many people, average of how many calls. I mean, does that increase call volume? I'm sure there's data to support that, and also what type of project it is. I mean, you touched on it. You know, if you build take Asbury, for example, you know, I'm sure they demand more of EMT services than, say, you know, I don't know, a drugstore that's being built.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's just and it's no disrespect to that project, it's just what it does. I mean, you know, it's going to, so that, once again, you know, I'm a big fan. I've been a small business person almost my whole life, but every business is responsible for its footprint.
And in the metropolitan area, a lot of the, shouldn't say a lot, but some of those major communities that have the higher demand actually provide a 911 EMS ambulance per se. And that could be something that could be worked into projects, you know, like that. I mean, Solomon's probably they run the most calls in the
10 to 12 a day, from my understanding, every day.
It's almost 28% of the entire call volume, and 15% of that area, that box area, is between the nursing home and the senior community there. So, I mean, I definitely think that that's the potential to mitigate that with development of that type of, you know, community could benefit from that could do that, because obviously that's going to draw away from the rest of the citizen response as well.
Right, for a big project, it's easy to make that determination. For a bunch of smaller projects, it's not as easy. And you know, my fellow commissioners are right. You know, we talk about all these things that are increased costs resulting from growth, but the dilemma that we're in now is figuring out how you get that down to one project. Because that's what we're talking about, improving a single project based on these parameters, and how you take the global impact and narrow that down to a specific project. And that's why I asked you that question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I understand, sir.
We're just talking through, it's a work session, I'm in my head trying to figure out how in reality we're gonna do this when the time comes.
I think if we're meeting that threshold at the time, then, you know, obviously we could absorb, but other than a large, you know, facility type thing. But the idea would be is if that threshold starts to drop, then that's going to stop or slow future development until the county can mitigate that, or the development would supplement that somehow. But I think if we're meeting that threshold, and I think that given the breakdown, and then we'll see new stats coming out that'll break it down by those little individual box areas, and I think that we're going to see that based on population density, call volume, the ones that are really far away, like say, for instance, Brooms Island, the call volume is very low, and the density is very low, so.
We're all healthy down there.
That's right, absolutely, sir.
Anything else?
I think.
Are you good, Jim?
Yep.
Lots of homework.
All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You have a
Jim.
good day.
We have Stanley Harris representing 911 Center.
Is the dog at work today?
Not today.
Not today.
Good morning, Commissioner. Stanley Harris, Division
Morning.
Chief, Emergency Communications.
Morning.
So in the industry, there's no industry standard that ties population to the number of telecommunicators needed to staff a 911 center. However, there are professional organizations that have developed staffing models that, for example, NENA, or the National Emergency Number Association, is one of those organizations that has taken into account multiple factors, one of them being call volume. So we're recommending that the 911 center be considered adequately staffed or adequate when the approved FTEs assigned to the 911 calls or dispatch emergency responders meets or exceeds the FTEs recommended by the NENA staffing tool as amended from time to time. So you've asked everybody in front of here, how do you tie this to a single project? You really can't with what we're proposing. It would be reactive. We look at this data yearly, so we would propose that, every 2 to 3 years, we're running this staffing model, making sure we're still meeting the recommended FTEs that are recommended in that staffing model. The next requirement is actually outlined in Title 12 of COMAR, is the county has sufficient number of call takers and equipment to consistently answer incoming calls on a daily average of 10 seconds or less. Currently today, we're at 7 seconds, but we monitor that every year. We look at those averages to make sure we're still meeting that requirement.
Very good.
And that's it.
Excellent. You answered my question. I don't have to ask it.
I'll learn, yeah.
Good.
Is it hard?
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Law enforcement. I believe Colonel McDowell is in the audience.
Yes, he is. He brought backup.
Was it?
They don't do anything by themselves. I've noticed that. Traffic stop is 4
Right,
cars.
you got to have backup, right? That's it.
At least 4 now, every time they pull a
We
car.
are talking about strategic planning, right? We need Stanley back up here.
I'll tell you what, he was quick. He was
He
to the
did
point,
good.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was on point.
Yes.
Good
Good morning,
morning, guys.
Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm Brent Parrott from the Sheriff's Office. I'm going to go over our presentation right quick with you. After review of current residential development applications and county census data, the Calvert County Sheriff's Office law enforcement services are deemed adequate. At this time, if the projected ratio of sworn law enforcement officers to population are 1.5 deputies per 1,000 residents. At this time, there's no identified commercial growth data to assist with this recommendation, as Calvert County government continues to receive residential or commercial development applications. Data used to determine whether the above law enforcement ratio to population can only be gathered upon completion of the projects and occupancy. The growth generated by any proposed residential subdivision or commercial business may not exceed the service capacity of existing law enforcement officers. So right now, if we use that particular data, it would call for a necessity of 138 sworn deputies to facilitate that deputy to citizen ratio using the latest census information of 92,094 citizens. We're currently sitting at approximately 168 sworn law enforcement officers, which is about 1.82 deputies per 1,000 residents. We do that because we'd include the court deputies, because in an emergency, a catastrophic event, a critical instance, we always can use those folks to do what we need them to do. If you took that number away, that would leave approximately 152 sworn law enforcement officers. That would put us right around 1.65, which is still above that 1.5 average. And again, as Stanley was saying, we're reactive to the extent we can't project necessarily to say you approve a 500 house or home residential subdivision. We can't project how many folks are going to be living in that residence. So we count individual bodies and other data points. But you have to think that if we had 1,000 additional residents in Calvert County, at some point they're going to need or request law enforcement services. And the big factor that we can't gather is transit traffic on our roadways. And I was listening to discussions earlier. That's a number you can't capture because you have the base in St. Mary's County. You have all the workflow that goes to DC, and the amount of traffic that comes through Calvert County that folks that don't live here is pretty great, but you can never capture that number. So again, we react to whether it's a motor vehicle accident, whether it's folks coming from other jurisdictions, maybe to commit crimes. We find that often when we apprehend them that are not from here. That's just data you can't capture off the cuff. So we're always reacting when we're projecting how many deputies it takes to facilitate law enforcement services in the county.
Dave McDowell, Commissioners, just to clarify, the 1.5 factor was determined about 10 years ago. Myself and then Lieutenant Bobby Jones were asked to do a study on response times, calls for service, and that's where we came up with the 1.5. So that data that we use for that is about a decade old now. It needs to be reassessed, and the 10-year mark is typically the industry standard when you reassess it, so we're right on the precipice of doing that as well.
So what's your average response time now?
I cannot give you answer to that question.
We don't because it's fluid. So for example, if a deputy's working, say beat 1, for example, in Dunkirk, and they are on a theft call or a priority call such as an accident, and another call goes out in that beat, that reaction or that response time is going to be different if they're not tied up on something beforehand.
But
We
you
often,
just work on an average. That's what we do in the fire service.
we could.
I mean, you
Yes,
can
sir.
nitpick, every little incident and say, well, you can't count that. But at the end of the day, just like the fire service, you just track them. And you say, this is what it is for, first response, second response.
So I'll give you an example. Last night, and I'll keep it vague, there was an incident. I was there, and it wasn't even 5 minutes for the officers to respond, but it feels like an eternity. Firehouse got there, I'm going, okay, you guys called, right? How long? And I'm going to tell you, the average person, no way was going to handle this person. No way. And it needed 2 officers. And no one got hurt. It was handled safely. And it was a ridiculous situation. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. They had obviously you guys know, you show up, you have to figure it out as you go. But that was the longest 5 minutes, so, that is going to be, like we were saying, with an ambulance call, with everything, that clock is going, and,
Yeah, when your house is on fire,
Mhm.
it seems like
Yeah.
forever
Yeah.
before that fire truck shows up.
And part of how we address that, Lieutenant Colonel McDowell spoke at the staff study that was done before, a more comprehensive staff study, is we actually redesigned our geographical patrol beat areas. So back in the day when I came on, it would be nothing to have 3 deputies working the whole county. And that would be from Dunkirk to the bowling alley to Brooms Island South. So what we did with redesigning the geographical areas is we shrunk the patrol beats. So that would afford exactly what you're talking about. It's called beat crossover. So that half, that 0.5, if stuff hits the fan where we have to have a emergency response by another deputy to assist another officer, that deputy from beat 2 can cross over in a relatively quick manner to beat 1 to help, or even beat 3. They're not too far out. And so that helped out a great deal, and that helps with your staffing numbers as well.
And I would like to say, too, that part of our success here in Calvert is the relationship between fire, EMS, and communications. We do all work very well together, and it's definitely to the benefit of the citizens and anyone who visits Calvert County.
And just for the record, too, the sheriff's office handled approximately 74,000 calls for service, law enforcement response in 2021, which is, it's a lot.
And I'm going to ask you guys, same as I asked, so if you have to put a brand-new officer on the road, what's that average cost?
$80,000 for salary and benefits, double that with equipment.
So $160,000 per,
Yes, sir.
roughly.
It's, I'm sorry, $90,000 with salary and benefits. It's $180,000 to field a brand-new deputy sheriff with salary, benefits, and equipment.
And I'll tell you, if you were there last night, you wouldn't care how much it cost because you wanted that person there like that. But, as increased as with the theme of today,
Well-
right now we have adequate staff. But would we 10 years from now?
Well, with body cam requirements, that's a huge contributor to those costs. That storage data is significant.
And as we've seen with that, more state's attorneys, because someone's got to review the footage, and of course, it's just a domino that once you hit it, boy, it just keeps going.
And it's mandated by the state of Maryland.
You can't control. No.
Thank you.
See why I brought Brent up here with
Yeah,
me?
absolutely. I should bring you more often.
Y'all have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Y'all have a
Take
great
care.
day.
Director Nazal.
Here comes the real money.
Yeah.
The real expense.
The real expense.
The real complaints.
I know I don't have any backup.
You're gonna need it.
Shannon is all Director of Parks and Recreation. So what? Thank you, Commissioner Weems, much appreciated. So when we looked at APF for park facilities, we really looked at land use and the acreage that can be utilized for public recreation space. So when we looked at that, how we were able to look at tying it into specific projects was to allocate that a certain number of square footage would correspond to the type of dwelling unit that was being proposed or built. So with that, we took the input from commissioners the last time we spoke to increase the amount of square footage for the multiple family dwelling unit properties to be higher square footage than single family detached dwelling units. So with that, if you look at the square footage that we have currently that we're looking at, so from the number of households in the county currently, it's 36,000. It's a little over 36,000 households in the county. So looking at that from the 1,500 square foot of public space per single family dwelling unit, and that's the information I have right now, that would be approximately 1,200 and change acres of parkland, public parkland. And currently we have within the county just over 2,300 acres of parkland. So with that, we are currently adequate in that. And what also on this slide indicates that if we did get to a point where we were no longer adequate as far as parkland space, that there would be an opportunity for a fee in lieu potential program to assist in paying for that extra capacity that would be needed. So determining adequacy on what that parkland would consist of, it would be park property, which is already defined in County Code in Chapter 82, and it would indicate that it would be a minimum opening from dawn to dusk, 7 days a week. So our seasonal facilities would not be included in the calculations, which brings down that what we currently have at about 2,300 acres of land, probably down to about 2,100 acres of land that we have open to the public during those minimum operating hours, as indicated. As far as the other adequacy, those are basically items just that indicate that it's a public park facility, that it's not just county land that is not open to the public. This indicates that it is open to the public.
And Shannon, I know you know the theme of today. You and I have had a million conversations. Do you have enough fields today?
Well, and that's the thing. So there are many different groups that would say that we're not adequate in the number of fields we have, or we're not adequate in the number of pools that we have, or we're not adequate with whatever the trend is of today.
And that's today.
So, correct. So when we're looking at APF, we really didn't want to look at it as far as trends go, because trends change over time. We want to be able to have something that is fairly long lasting and can be monitored appropriately over time as far as the amount of land that we have. Development changes, some trends change. I mean, back in the 80s and there was shuffleboard everywhere, and that was the thing. In the 90s, it was skate parks and roller hockey rinks, and that was the thing in the 90s. Then, the trends change. It's pickleball is very, important to the community. So when you have those trends that change, that's something that can, of course, always be assessed within, the capital improvement plan. But as far as adequate public facilities go, the best way to really account for that, that I've seen, in research and talking to other jurisdictions, is the land use.
Well, look at Halloween Point Park. When I was a kid playing ball there was no officer outside, and everybody used that entrance. Drove past there the other weekend. There's still an officer out there, and we spent how much? Say again?
2 million.
To make an exit out there so it's safe. We even had an officer hit there. And so, I mean, that's today. And I know I'm a broken record, but that's why, I mean, I cannot see any one of these slides that we're like, we're good.
With that said, though, congratulations on Calvert County Parks is accredited now through
Oh, through the National Recreation and Parks
Yes.
Association, through
one of the best. How many in the country?
We are in the top 1% of the country as far as best practices in parks and recreation services.
Can you help us get to be the top 1% and lowest traffic in the country as well?
That is not my expertise. I'm sure we have people for that. But what I would say about the APF indication on the square footage per dwelling unit, that's always something that we can adjust based on what the will is of the county and the commissioners. If you look at taking it to the completely other extreme, if we were to say that every single family, dwelling unit, detached dwelling unit was worth 3,000 square foot of open recreation space, then we would be over capacity at that point. So we're kind of in the middle right now as far as what those square footages could be, but those are always adjustable based on conversations.
Okay,
Any questions?
I think we're good.
right.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe you want to see some of this back. I guess my question would be,
Just a little bit, not much.
do you want us to get comments from the Planning Commission at this time, or wait until we've worked through it a little bit further with the commissioners?
You might have to do a little more work. You got some guidance today.
Yes.
Personally, as you heard, I am challenged of how, I understand some of these issues are all growth related. And I think some of the information we got today was a good structure of how we future plan for certain. I'm just challenged with how we would tie that to a particular project is my challenge.
Yeah, and it appears some of the categories fall under, they do their analysis, they, do their studies once a year, every 3 years, and it would be at that point where they're exceeding capacity where we would stop development.
Right.
So not necessarily on a development by development basis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. That's where I'm struggling.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
Because then you go, well, they met this, but
So maybe you take another stab and refine it a little bit more and before we send it on.
Okay,
If that's,
sounds reasonable.
is that okay?
It's
No
gonna
Ds
extend-
allowed.
No Ds allowed.
No. All
Well,
right.
and it poses another question, though. The timeline would probably be pushed back, correct? From
Yes.
that November
So we were hoping
timeframe.
for a late November public hearing.
I'm just saying.
Right.
Unless you want to go to the planning commission now and get their feedback too and use the two together
To-
before you do a lot of refining.
There you go.
that's true.
Okay, we
And
could do that.
They
I
got
only-
different perspectives.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah. How about,
That would still keep it on,
Agreed.
yeah.
on schedule.
Keep it
Okay.
on schedule.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to you with a hopefully solid draft that addresses a lot of the questions.
And see what they have to say.
Okay, we can do
Yeah,
that.
That's a good call.
that's good.
Great.
All right, thank you, Mary.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So now we go back to new business, item number 2, Department of Planning, Zoning, Community Rating System. Mr. Marney, good morning. Yeah,
You got one there?
I got it in just in time.
Here we go. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm bringing before you this morning the Community Rating System, or CRS, Annual Recertification. Background is part of the ongoing efforts to participate in the Federal Emergency Management Agency's CRS program. The Department of Planning and Zoning has to complete an annual recertification. FEMA approved the county's participation in the CRS program in January of 2015 with a May 1st, 2015 effective date. Property owners located within the 100-year floodplain receive a 10% discount on their insurance premiums annually under the CRS program. Discussion. As part of the annual recertification process, the Department of Planning and Zoning must certify that it is continuing to participate in the CRS program in the same or higher capacity as presented to FEMA at the time we were initiated into the program. That's done by completing the attached form CC-213 and the accompanying documentation. In addition, as part of the recertification process, the Department of Planning and Zoning is providing the annual progress report on the county's flood mitigation plan. Fiscal impact. Fiscal impact for participating in the CRS program includes a variety of annual mailers, and it's associated with requiring outreach to property owners that are located in the floodplain and to various professionals such as real estate agents and bankers and other industries. Information provided in the mailers includes how to identify if a property is in the 100-year floodplain, mandatory flood insurance requirements, flood preparedness measures, financial assistance, and contacts for appropriate county staff. Cost for staff salary and time required to prepare the report and other documents is absorbed by the Department of Planning and Zoning. Conclusion and recommendation. Staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners approve the annual report and authorize the Board President to sign the Form CC-213 for the annual recertification.
It's a lot of stuff in there. I hope annually you can just go in there and make a few edits.
I do my best.
Questions? Discussion? Motions?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the annual report and authorize the board president to sign the Form CC-213 for the CRS annual recertification.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we approve the annual report and authorize the board president to sign the Form CC-213 for the CRS annual recertification. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners.
It's the quickest thing we've done all day.
And it's now afternoon, so good afternoon.
Yeah, you have a good afternoon. Item 3, Office of County Administrator Broadband Cable Build-Out. Ms. Ashley. Mr. Comer. Morning.
Good afternoon.
Good
afternoon.
Officially afternoon.
Yeah.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Ashley Staples-Reed, Special Projects Program Manager, and to my right, I have.
Chris Comer, Director of Government Affairs for Comcast.
Okay, so I will go ahead and read the memo. So for background, in August 2021, the Board of County Commissioners removed the customer contribution and cost-sharing requirement between the customer and Comcast. In November 2021, the BOCC expanded the August 2021 scope/decision and included all homes beyond the 300-foot requirement as outlined by the 2018 Comcast franchise agreement. On June 28, 2022, an update was given to the BOCC regarding the number of homes who have indicated a need for service, which we are indicating as Phase 3, as well as an estimated cost based on underground construction, which would provide the quickest, most efficient path for connection. Staff was directed to schedule a public hearing to approve and adopt funding for Phase 3, as well as return with a memorandum of understanding with Comcast to finalize the cable build-out. The Department of Finance and Budget did hold a public hearing on August 2nd and to allocate the funds, and the record was closed and was adopted on August 23rd, 2022. So discussion as staff is returning with the memorandum of understanding with Comcast for the Phase 3 build-out for BOCC consideration. The agreement addresses the expansion needs for 519 homes throughout the county. Fiscal impact. Current project estimate is $6,236,739 and is subject to change based on the addition of homes outlined in Exhibit B of the agreement. Conclusion and recommendation. Staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the President to execute the memorandum of understanding with Comcast to finalize the project. Happy to answer any questions. It's a big number.
It's my understanding that when we approve this and get this, if and when it's approved and get this finalized, we will be the first and only county in the state of Maryland to have 100% broadband connectivity.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
So again, we're trendsetters.
It really is true. I mean, Calvert has done more than any other county in the state of Maryland to really make a difference and move towards that universal service.
I'm just glad we started it before COVID.
No, I-
Because now all of a sudden, here
Mhm.
comes everybody, and we were already en route for that. So
No, that early commitment really makes a huge difference.
Certainly. And one of the good outcomes out of the pandemic was the need of it. So now there's more funding available that we can apply for to help offset any additional funds. So there's more grant opportunities coming out that we can apply for.
So we've been into this now over a year?
This specific phase build out,
Well, since the beginning of build-out? A year and a half?
about a year and a half, yes. We started with phase 1 and phase 2.
Right.
Phase 1 is known as the Barstow area, and then phase 2 is some pocketed areas throughout the county.
And
Those
we
are completed.
Have the interactive map on the website where
Correct.
people can view what's done and what's not done.
And the goal is, once we do hopefully get a signed agreement, we can work with construction, and we'll have a construction schedule for all of those 519 homes that we can provide to the public, so they have a better understanding of when to expect their specific house to be completed.
has the process been pretty smooth with getting access? Because, some of the lines, weren't yours, being their electric or whatever. Has that all been transitioning pretty smooth?
No, it really has. I
Good.
certainly want to commend SMECO and even Verizon, the utilities that own the poles that we have to attach to. They've all worked very closely with us and helped expedite these projects so that they weren't bogged down any longer than necessary.
Good.
And I do want to commend Comcast construction team. Very communicative when it comes to the progress, and we do hold weekly updates with the construction team to get those updates.
So the original projection was for how many houses? Homes?
I believe the original projection was for about 350 homes, and that's indicated as Exhibit A as a part of the agreement,
And now, how many are we at?
519.
So we have to tell the public that, originally we said we were going to be done by this winter, but because of the expansion and inclusion of those additional homes, it's not going to be done this winter. There's going to be a slight delay.
Well, when we had our update in June and we had presented these 350 homes, the route that was chosen was the quickest, most efficient route, which would be the majority underground, with utilizing, aerial when we need to. And that was projected by Kevin Broadhurst as 18 to 24 months. So I'm not sure how much that's going to be impacted with these additional 200 homes. That's what the discussions are going to have to be next.
And even the homes that we're reviewing, some of these are questionable. Some of them may have service, they may have service outside, and it's just a simple long, driveway to get service to them. So in the end, it may end up being fewer homes that we're surveying now as part of that Exhibit B. We've had some instances, Ashley can tell you, where someone has called in or reported that they don't have service when they actually do, or it's available to them.
Right, so we just want to encourage everybody to go on the website, look at the map. If you don't have service and you want to get on the list and you're not on the list, please get on the list. We want to get this wrapped up. We don't want to drag it out forever. And my fellow commissioners are correct. When we go out and tell other counties that we're going to hook every house, they say, well, you don't mean every house. No, we mean every house.
Every
We don't
house
want
that
any
wants it.
house in Calvert County that wants service. This is your opportunity to get service. This won't go on forever. At some point, there'll be a cutoff. So you need to make sure you're on the list. And I'm apologizing to all my friends who must be the bottom of the list because they keep calling me and saying, you said we were going to get hooked up. And I tell them, it's coming, but we are coming. But as we mentioned earlier, we've added a whole lot of homes that at first we weren't going to include, and then we decided we will. So it added to the volume of installations, and so we want to thank Comcast for their efforts to get this project done. Like Commissioner Hart said, we tried to jump in early and we were smart in that decision anyway. We got ahead of the rush. Because now there's money out there and everybody wants to hook a lot of houses, so.
Easy to do the right thing with somebody else's money, right?
Yeah, well, we.
So.
No, I appreciate that, but really.
No, it's true though. I mean, we made that commitment. We knew that, it was a huge need and some folks just didn't have the means to be able to make that happen, and COVID proved, there was always the excuse, well, you can go to community center, you can go to the library. Well, COVID said, no, you can't. So, I mean, hopefully we never experience anything like that again, but if so, it'll be a lot easier.
We'll be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve and authorize the president to execute the memorandum of understanding with Comcast to finalize the project.
Second?
Have a motion and a second that we approve and authorize the president to execute the memorandum of understanding with Comcast to finalize the project. Any discussion on that motion?
I just want to publicly state that if you need a second on digging any ditches for your friends out in the field, Mr. President, I will help you, sir.
Well, you have
I ain't digging no
experience in
ditches.
that. You do have experience in
They're
that.
not that good of friends. Is there any other discussion pertinent to the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
I do
Thank
want
you.
to publicly comment, we hear complaints about Comcast all the time. My wife called with a complaint recently, and there was a Comcast guy there.
Just couldn't leave on a good note.
We couldn't do it.
Just let me finish.
Okay.
There was a Comcast guy there within 2 hours, and he came to the house. He checked everything, found a few issues. He said, but I think there's an issue with the line out on your road. And within an hour, there were 2 service trucks out there working on the line on my road.
That's great. I'm
Was
glad,
that
I'm glad
after
to hear.
3 or 4 hours on hold?
No, none.
Stop.
So I just want to pass that along publicly because
I appreciate
we get
that,
all
too.
the complaints.
I will
but-
say that we do have a really good relationship with Comcast and escalation team, so when we do receive those calls, we usually get really good responses back.
Yeah, so.
Oh.
If you could just
Thank
lower
you.
everybody's bills by 50%, it'd be even better.
Well, I will put in a plug for the Affordable Connectivity Program.
Right, that is out there.
So that is out there. There's still millions of residents in Maryland that are eligible for that broadband subsidy of $30 a month, plus the state's providing additional $15 per month. The state is a temporary fund where the federal program's designed to be more permanent. But there's so many eligible households that are out there. So if someone's eligible for Medicaid,
So how do we
SNAP,
get that
supplemental
information
Social
out?
Security.
I will certainly have our communications
CMR?
and media relations team do that. We'll put it out on,
Jennifer's raising her hand. She might have a list for you.
No, that's,
we'll make sure it's readily available.
and it's something where residents have to go to a federal website to apply for the credit. It's not something that, we can just provide automatically, but it takes, I've been with customers, sat with them, it takes 10 minutes as they go through that process and apply. So it's really a great opportunity for someone to get, in essence, free service, for free broadband service. So, again, just as we encourage
Free?
everyone to, we have a service at Internet Essentials Plus service for $29.95, where you can get the internet service for free.
What's the criteria? We'll make sure that criteria gets
Yeah.
out to
So-
the public, so
so
people that
again,
do qualify can.
Apply for the
Yep.
Affordable Connectivity Program,
Yep.
and if you don't have service, now, as you said, is the time to step forward and identify.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Have a good afternoon. Next item on the agenda is Calvert County Detention Center. Hi, how are you?
Morning. All right, so, I'm sorry. Good
Say
afternoon.
Afternoon. I'm Mary Lehman, the grants coordinator, and I'm going to be reading Sergeant Underwood's memo from the Department of Calvert County Detention Center. The background. The Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth, and Victim Services is offering grant funding for the FY 2023 Edward J. Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, and that's known as BJAG. Discussion. The Calvert County BJAG will help reduce existing gaps in services and foster collaboration and cooperation among partner agencies and stakeholders in Calvert County. The program will consist of the Calvert County Public Schools High School Criminal Justice Program and the Calvert County Sheriff's Office Correction Bureau's Community Supervision Unit. These organizations will work together for the goal of reducing the number of individuals incarcerated within or affected by the criminal justice system and provide education to the youth in our community on the criminal justice system. Program funds will cover operating expenses, staffing, urinalysis screenings, electronic monitoring equipment, program supplies, and training. The total requested amount is $88,115. Fiscal impact, none. This grant does not require a county match. Conclusion recommendation, staff requests the president sign the attached application certifications on behalf of the board.
So Mary, the personnel, is that one person assigned to that program?
I believe at the moment there are two. We have another grant that's paying for the second person.
So that person, this operates during the school year, calendar year?
It's a fiscal year grant. The criminal justice program within the high school receives supplies. It's not for a person in the school system. It's just for their supplies for the program.
And that's a very popular program in the schools.
It is very popular.
A lot
It's 3 years, 4 classes, I think, that they take.
Very good. Questions?
No, it's a very good program, and glad to see it continuing.
Lunch is getting cold.
Mr. President?
I can't make motions.
I know.
Go ahead.
I move
Mary's got to get back to
that we approve and authorize the president to sign the grant application certifications on behalf of the board.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we approve and authorize the president to sign the grant application certification on behalf of the board. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Enjoy.
Next item is Department of Community Resources. Director Moreland.
Morning, Commissioners. Jennifer
Afternoon.
Moreland, good afternoon, yeah. Director of Community Resources for Calvert County Government. I have with me my predecessor, a familiar face, Maureen Hoffman.
Good to see ya.
Who's on the CAHA board.
Nice to see you. Yeah.
And then Harriet Gossett, who's also with the Calvert Affordable Housing Alliance Board. Would you like to
Welcome.
save time and not read the memo?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll move forward with the presentation then.
Okay, well, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. I'm Harriet Gossett, chairperson of the Calvert Affordable Housing Alliance, also known as CAHA. Our directors present today are Maureen Hoffman, Judy Hooker, and Sean Kingston. Our other member is Rick Perrick. Thank you for giving me time on your agenda to update you on CAHA. Calvert Affordable Housing Alliance is not a new organization. It was established in 2000 as a nonprofit. A lot's happened since then, but the need for reliable, low to middle income housing still exists. CAHA is now focused on making additional housing opportunities available for low to median income families, disabled individuals, veterans, and young families struggling to obtain housing in Calvert County, one house at a time. We're here to update you on the progress of our first project and make a request. Maureen Hoffman will present specific information about our project, then we'll address your questions.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's good to see those of you I'm familiar with and our new well, I'm new to you, you may be not.
I'm not new anymore. I can't use that excuse.
through the power of Zoom, I have managed to stay involved with Calvert Affordable Housing Alliance from my new home in Fayetteville, Pennsylvania, just west of Gettysburg. Wonderful, wonderful whoopie pies there.
But you didn't bring any.
You know, it's hard to choose.
Request denied.
Well, they can always be shipped. Because I feel so passionately about this. And, you know, affordable housing is a difficult topic under any circumstances. So our goal as Calvert Affordable Housing Alliance is try and fit in with what works for the community. And so we're a small group of people who have experience with what has been tried in the past and failed, what is possible in the future, and where we can get funding to do these kinds of projects. So a couple of years ago, I'm not going to say how many, you all donated a parcel, a surplus parcel on Daybeck Drive, which is down near Benedict neighborhood. It's a small neighborhood, and the house had been bulldozed, and it was just an empty lot. And so we've been working, believe it or not, since then to try and move forward with the project. You specifically requested that it be for a veteran, and a disabled veteran would be an even better way to fill it, and a disabled veteran with a family would be the best, because we want to help those who've served our country and have a need. Okay, so the lot is there. We're ready to move forward now that the prices have stabilized on construction costs. And I want to tell you a little bit about CAHA, because I'm afraid it's going to get lost to posterity. I mean, this started in the year 2000, and I was here then. And what happened was the housing market was such a whirlwind that the original purpose of it was to refurbish unsafe housing. Well, it got refurbished because people sold the properties that had unsafe housing to developers to build new housing. And so the original purpose was never carried out. So housing is like waves on a beach. You can't really pin it down. And since that time, what you've been doing with the money, which is in the county coffers, is you have been using it as the county match for first-time home buyers. And that program is run through the Department of Housing and Community Development. And it works with firefighters, school teachers, county employees, the library, anybody who hasn't owned a home. And I don't know what their requirements are now, can work with DHCD to get a mortgage, and this money is used to match the state's money for the down payment, which is always a hurdle. Okay, so that's what the money's been used for since then, and I don't know how many houses have been built. When I left 5 years ago, I think we were in the 30s or 40 new homeowners, people that work in the community.
We have an average of about 2 a year. During COVID, when interest rates, or prior to COVID, when interest rates were really low, there were more competitive programs out there, and so they were choosing those Maryland Mortgage products over the House Keys for Employees. Now, House Keys for Employees looks attractive, so we are actually seeing an uptick in requests.
Yeah, so it goes back and forth, but essentially you've been using the money to help first-time home buyers. Okay, so this is kind of the same thing. We've given you a preliminary construction estimate for constructing a 3-bedroom, 2-bath Rambler that fits the style of the houses that exist in that neighborhood. It'll have a carport attached to it. We are first in line for a perk test. And the construction costs at this point are estimated, it's not too awful, $260,000. We've had a lot of interest in the community from certain organizations that want to help do some of this work, like we need decks built, we need landscaping, we need other things that they can contribute to. We will not be coming back to you for any funding for the actual construction of the house. We have a couple different funding sources lined up, And the Housing Authority serves as kind of the administrative arm for us in loans and such. So that's why we're connected, but we're not connected. We are our own independent body. But the Housing Authority is a very valuable partner to us, and they can access monies that we might not be able to because they have the connections at the state level and the federal level. So you've seen what the house is supposed to look like. I guess that would be the next slide. Very reasonable. No basement. It'll be a slab home, and I think given the tidal waters there, that's probably a good idea. Yeah. And what we're ready to do and what we're asking today is you have money still in your county coffers under the Affordable Housing Fund. And we're asking for you to restrict or designate up to $50,000 of that money for us to get all our permits and our site development started. A lot of this, we think it's best kept in the county coffers because a lot of this will be in-house transfers. We're going to be paying for, permits and all the other things that go along with getting ready to build a house. And we will be submitting invoices that finance can double and triple check whatever they want to do to know that the costs are legitimate and that we can't overspend. So we're not asking for the money to be given out of your control. We're just asking you to carve a certain portion of that money for the startup costs for this house. And so we anticipate if you're able to accommodate us, starting construction in March of 2023. And we're really excited about it because we want to use our expertise to do this, to put houses where they're not going to be big projects, fitting into the community, people who really need this type of housing, and that's what we're all about. So open to questions.
Do you already have a family for this?
We have a couple different identified family. Well, we have a couple different choices, and the beauty of this is that when Calvert County's Housing Authority became the administrative office of the VASH vouchers, which is the Veterans Administrative Supportive Housing, we do have a number of veterans in the county who get these vouchers, and a voucher will pay for the mortgage.
And I'm sure this is all thought out, so if the person no longer wants to live there in a few years, does it go back to another needy person that needs the home?
There can be some kind of stipulation put on the deed that in perpetuity it stays within a veteran community or a disabled, that we learned our lesson with a particular development on 231, that if you don't do that, people flip houses and walk away with the profit, and that's not our intention at all.
Right, I want to make sure that
Yeah.
because we have a shortage anyway.
Right.
So as many that we can accommodate, maybe they hit lottery and want to move to Switzerland or something. Hey, great, but, we still have a need.
Right, and the thing is, you also want to respect that the family who owns a home wants to build their future stability. So it may be a prorated equity sharing, depending upon the number of years that they're in the house. We haven't really decided yet. We'll talk to you about that more, but we definitely will now allow it to become a house that's just flipped after a year for profit. So, questions?
So Mark, we waived all the fees? I think we should.
I
That's
was
just
gonna
my
look to
20%.
John just to make sure that, because I was thinking that same thing too.
I think there are some that can't be waived.
Yeah, we can't waive state fees.
Yeah, I think that.
But we'll look at that.
And whatever, yeah, because that would continue the money in your fund, to use for other affordable housing projects. And we're hoping, to get out there and fundraise. Once we get started, it'll really build, community awareness, and it will build on itself to move us on to the next one.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you solicit people to maybe not donate, but at least give you reductions in cost for materials?
Well, right now, we've got a request in for a donation for the cost of materials through a corporation, and that would be really cool if they would do that. But if that doesn't happen, and we have to go to a stick-built or modular would be the next type, where it's not a mobile home, it just comes in sections. And after having lived in the Ranch Club the first couple years of my life in Calvert County, I know modular homes. But they're very nice, and so whatever is most cost-effective, and, whatever we can get from the community to help us out would be great.
Yep.
So, Mr. President, I'm going to make the motion.
You're gonna
and
amend the
I wanted-
motion?
Yes, but I wanted to insert your proffered statement, and inclusive of potentially any other exemptions such as TDRs. Correct? I mean, are we?
Well, they should qualify because there's already an exemption for low income
Correct.
and,
They would.
so
Yeah.
that should already qualify.
Yeah.
And if it was a lot, already had a house on it, it should have TDR.
It did. This is redevelopment of existing residential lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if I make the motion contingent upon the waiving of future fees, which will come back? Is that admissible today, Counselor?
In lieu of transferring the funding, you wish to waive the county fees?
No.
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 In addition to.
We'll do
In
both.
addition to? Okay. Sorry, I had frog in my throat.
Yeah.
Sounds like we need to do some research anyway, so.
Yeah, what we can do and what we can't do, but every little bit
Okay.
is important.
So, yeah, your motion all your motion needs to be is that we allow the administrator to look into waiving any county fees associated with construction of the home.
Okay, that sounds good. Very good.
I can't make motions.
I'm going to make that motion.
Second. Are you gonna repeat it the whole thing, or just go off what he
I
said?
can do whatever counselor tells me I can do.
You're in order, so
Fair enough.
I think you said
We
so
got a
moved.
second?
I have a motion and a second that we authorize the county administrator to look into waiving any and all county fees associated with construction of this house, and that we approve the transfer of $50,000 from the Affordable Housing Fund for lot development, including surveys, well, septic, and permits at 6033 Daybreak Drive for the construction of a single-family home for a disabled veteran and his or her family. Any discussion on that motion?
No discussion on this motion. I just want to tell Ms. Maureen that Jennifer and yourself are fine examples of directors, former and current.
Thank you.
Miss Mary, I
I had a
can't.
good teacher.
You're wonderful too, Miss Mary.
And thank you for keeping her, in the forefront, because these are important, citizens' issues are important issues, and sometimes they get lost in all the other business of
We're not letting her
government.
go anywhere.
Thank you. Thank
Any
you so
other
much.
discussion pertinent to the motion?
No, sir.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Good
Oh, no,
afternoon.
thank
Thank
you.
y'all.
Afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Look for whoopie pies, I will send them.
All right.
See?
Miss Stacy.
You do know me. So, last item under new business, Department of Community Resources. Mr. Ed Sullivan himself.
Yes, sir.
Going to be a really big presentation.
Ed never tires of it. Yes, I can tell.
That joke's been going about 7 years now.
Not by me.
Commissioners, Ed Sullivan, our, of course, division chief is here, and he'll be reading through the memo today in regards to our grant allocation for FY23 senior and information and assistance.
Commissioners, thank you. Some background. The Office on Aging has received additional fiscal year 23 senior information and assistance funding, INA funding, through the Maryland Department of Aging to hire one full-time Maryland Access Point Coordinator. A copy of the notification of grant award was attached. Please note that the notification of grant award shows a total allocation of $80,701. The Office on Aging receives information and assistance funding annually through the area plan budget, where $9,110 is already in place as regular fiscal year 23 funding, and $71,591 is the additional funding awarded for fiscal year 23. Discussion. The Maryland Department of Aging has awarded the Office on Aging $71,591 to support this position as outlined in the attached budget adjustment BA082. The Office on Aging will request annual funding from the Maryland Department of Aging for future sustainability and is optimistic that the Maryland Department of Aging will continue to fund the position beyond fiscal year 23, but this is not guaranteed. The Office on Aging has MAP federal financial participation, or FFP funding, that could be considered for use to supplement the position if necessary beyond fiscal year 23. No fiscal impact to the county, and our recommendation is that the Office on Aging, we request board approval of budget adjustment BA082. And certainly we'll answer any questions that you might have.
I don't see any.
Mr. President, I move that we approve budget adjustment BA082. Sorry, I had to
I got you.
look at it again.
Have a motion and a second that we approve budget adjustment BA082. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That was short and sweet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
Last item on the agenda is the presentation from Department of Community Resources. Ms. Wobbleton.
A lot of slides.
You're in the unfortunate position of being the last item of the day, and we're an hour behind schedule.
for last.
Go like every fifth slide.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Commissioners, we're very excited to be here today. I'm Sandy Wobbleton, our division chief, and we're also joined by a representative from KFH Group, and please indicate your name.
Sure. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Will Sutton, and I'm a transportation planner with KFH Group.
Welcome.
Afternoon.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't think, would you like us to read the memo, or should we continue?
No.
Yeah, we're saving time. Okay, good deal. So, go ahead.
We're not trying to rush you.
But-
Motion to approve.
But
All right. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for your time today. Really, I want to present to you the results of a year-long planning process where we have looked at Calvert County public transportation through the Transit Development Plan. So I've put together a presentation here really to kind of dance across the rooftops of all of the various tasks and objectives we had throughout the plan. But just to give you an idea of what a TDP is its acronym, it's required by the state of Maryland every 5 years for each locally operated transit system. So every jurisdiction has to complete one of these. It's primarily funded through the state, but a contribution also comes from the local county. So you did participate funds in this. The typical activities of the plan are to identify the county's goals and objectives for transit service over the next 5 years, look at unmet needs, come up with alternatives to meet those needs, and then also sketch out a 5-year idea and budgets that go along with that as well as to improve public transit. So the planning process can also be broken down into 5 steps. That's really initiating the plan, talking with a TDP advisory committee, which is made up of representatives from the community, doing an existing conditions review where we look at demographics, community outreach, surveys, stakeholder interviews, as well as pulling together all of the various system alternatives, and then of course coming up with the conceptual plan itself. So TDP goals, and this was largely taken from our experience throughout the entire year-long TDP process. This was conducted beginning in 2021, so there was a large impetus in really maintaining the existing services. Ridership had dropped on several of the routes and services, so there was a real big interest in making sure that they keep going to ensure that they are available for residents. And we also wanted to improve the transit system by exploring the possibility of having time transfers between the regional routes that come from in the rural areas of the county into Prince Frederick and Solomon themselves, so that people can hop off of one bus and hop onto the next bus without having to wait extended periods of time. There's also interest in pursuing a dedicated public transit facility here in Prince Frederick, as well as coordinating with area medical providers just to ensure that residents were getting to their appointments and other medical needs as needed. So the existing services, just to give you an idea, Calvert County Public Transportation is not the only public transit provider in Calvert County. It's also served by the MTA commuter buses with service going into the Washington, D.C. area, and also by St. Mary's Transit System, which provides a connection in Solomons over to the Naval Air Station. So Calvert County Public Transportation Service is rather robust. There are 8 different routes and shuttles with service bands ranging from about 6:30 to 7 a.m. to 3 to 5 p.m. in the evening. So a good amount of service there. Most of the routes have headways of about 1 to 2 hours. And essentially what that means is the vehicle comes to each stop approximately 1 or 2 hours, providing that level of service. There are 2 primary transfer points here in Prince Frederick and also at Patuxent Plaza down in Solomons. The fares for trips are currently $1.50 for a route service, which takes you much more of a distance, whereas the shuttles are only 75 cents per trip. As part of the unmet needs analysis, we took a look at all of the various population and demographics and land use profile from publicly available data in Calvert County. As you can see, population densities are really located in Prince Frederick, Chesapeake Ranch Estates, as well as the North Beach and Chesapeake Beach area. Looking at a combined demographic index compiling people that are low income, older individuals, young adults, people living in autoless households, we came up with a map in the center which really shows transit need or propensity. So these are the areas where we would expect to have the most ridership on transit. Pairing that with a map all the way to the right, you can see a heat map of major destinations within the county. And of course, these are located primarily within the town centers, which is where we really want to transport people to and from. So general conclusions from this whole analysis. The population growth that has been experienced over the last 20 or 30 years is expected to slow, not to stop. It is still growing. But a real key piece of that is the senior population, 65 and above, is expected to grow by 30% looking out to 2045. So we're seeing that cohort really expand in population numbers. And that being one of the primary users of public transit in the county, that's something that we definitely want to keep our eye on. In addition to that, the northern area with spillover from Anne Arundel County is starting to emerge as more of a high growth area, especially for seniors and individuals with disabilities. So that was something we didn't see in the previous plan 5 years ago that we might want to keep our eye on moving forward. But above all, the current service is excellent. There's coverage everywhere. Virtually every major trip generator in the county is covered. All of the demographic areas that we examined have transit service. So there is coverage, but it might not be the fastest coverage that people want. And that was something that really kind of came out of some of the community input as well. Just to give you an idea of the service performance review, the state of Maryland has generated service performance standards. And all of the fixed routes meet or exceed those standards. So that's very excellent news. With the ADA service, the paratransit service, or the senior service, those trips are typically longer, more miles, more hours. So we didn't see them hitting all of the scores. But a lot of that is due to the geography of the county. And given that it's kind of stretched north to south, there are a lot more distances to be traveled in typical counties in the state. So ridership in the pandemic. This was definitely something that underscored our entire planning process. And here we're looking at virtually all of the ridership from when we did the last TDP to the current TDP. And it's hard to ignore that the pandemic had a major impact on transit service. Ridership has absolutely rebounded, but in looking at the rebound, I think it's really important to kind of look at the various services that are doing very well. For example, the White Line is the Prince Frederick Circulator, the local service in town. It's done extremely well. People use it to get around. It's very popular. Also looking at the primary north and south routes that travel on Route 2 and 4, really connecting the northern and southern portions of the county are also doing very well as well. The routes that have had a slower comeback are more so serving the mid-county area, special connections to Dunkirk and things like that. We are seeing a little bit slower growth in. But getting into community outreach and just kind of some of the general takeaways, there's a very positive opinion of the transit in the county. We were able to ride the buses, talk to riders. They all had excellent things to say. They really enjoyed the service. It really is a godsend for them getting to employment, medical appointments, and other things like that. There was a lack of awareness that we did notice for some routes and schedules. And really, this kind of goes into, there really isn't a ton of transit infrastructure within the county, and by that I mean bus stop signs and poles and things like that. So if you are along a transit route, you can go out and just flag down the bus anywhere you would like, which is a very convenient thing, but it also generates some confusion as to where people might be able to get on and off the bus. So that was something that did come up. And we conducted a rider survey. I believe we collected about 50 or 60 survey responses from riders. Overall, 73% of riders are strongly satisfied by the service. Really, the highest levels of dissatisfaction were within days and hours of service. So again, remember, service does end typically in the early afternoon between 3 and 5 p.m., so there was a lot of interest in extending that so that people that work until 4 or 5 are able to catch their trip home. And there was also a lot of more interest in providing more frequency of buses. So again, getting back to those 1 to 2 hour headways, that can be a long time to wait for the bus if you miss the previous one before it. So opportunities for the improvement, again, coverage is excellent. Really one of the best in Maryland. I've done several TDPs across the state, and it's absolutely excellent coverage. It goes everywhere. But that does come at a cost because you don't have high frequency on certain routes. So really, in a nutshell, I think that was one of the greatest takeaways. But to get a little bit further in, the time transfers were really a major improvement that was desired by riders. The transfer rate is approximately 43%. So 43% of riders have to use 2 buses to get to their final destination. So being able to make that seamless transfer would be really important to improve their ride and experience. And also, we really looked at expanding the fixed routes to provide that increased frequency. And with the current services, they really are at capacity. So looking at expanding that would require a new vehicle and a new driver. So we are looking at, relatively major capital and operational investment really to expand these services. It's not something that can currently be done within the existing constraints. There was also a lot of interest in expanding Saturday services. Currently, Saturday service includes service here in Prince Frederick as well as the north-south connections, but does not include, for example, the circulator done in Solomons or the Mid-County or Dunkirk specific routes. And again, I think throughout this entire process, the riders were very supportive of us, very supportive of the service, but they really wanted more direct routes. There was a lot of interest in more door-to-door service and expansion in rural areas. And there's this new kind of methodology in transit, which is called microtransit. And it's really born out of the Uber or Lyft model, where people are able to use their phone, they request a ride, and they can track the vehicle getting all the way to their house, and it kind of provides this shared ride experience. Well, there was a lot of interest in the community in looking at that as an opportunity to improve coverage in some of the rural areas instead of having routes that are only traveling through every 1 to 2 hours. So that was a different interest, and people have definitely been educated about that. Again, talking about bus stop passenger amenities, that was an interest in providing shelters or benches for some major stops where people might be waiting for the buses to come through, and also expanding outreach and marketing. One of the big comments that we heard was really just improving upon the current route schedules and providing more detailed maps and things like that for information that's publicly available. So with all of that in mind, we started to look at the various alternatives that we could use to improve transit service. Excuse me. We've developed a comprehensive list of system-wide route adjustments, which are cost neutral. We're really looking at switching some schedules to provide more of the seamless transfers, and also looking at doing minor realignments on some of the current routes just to provide more direct service. So people don't necessarily have to travel all the way north just to get to a destination that really is closer to Prince Frederick, but at the end of the transit line. So that was something that we really wanted to do. We also investigated the feasibility of on-demand transit or microtransit, and really putting hourly service on all routes. During our review of all of the existing transportation planning documents that Calvert County has put forth, this is a goal that is mentioned in all of them, is providing hourly service on the major corridors. So we really wanted to reiterate this in our planning. And also, of course, the service hour expansion into the early evening. again, focusing on those core routes, north and south, and then evaluating the need for the other routes. And of course, we mentioned the Saturday service, looking at various infrastructure improvements such as bus stops, as well as a dedicated transfer center. Again, the Public Transit Agency currently uses Calvert Pine Senior Center as their transit center, and it really is about at capacity for the existing service. So if we do, or if you guys do get to the point where you are looking to expand frequency, adding additional vehicles, looking at a dedicated transfer center that could absorb that capacity would be a next step as well. So that's definitely something we wanted to include in the 5-year planning horizon. And also, of course, marketing, updating the schedules was the big takeaway there. So within the 5-year plan, we really broke these out into kind of short range, mid-range, and then just looking beyond the planning process itself. So the system-wide route adjustments we put in there for years 1 and 2, since they ideally should be cost neutral, as well as looking at bus stop improvements, specifically at major destinations. So the town centers, Prince Frederick, major shopping facilities, things like that, and also marketing enhancements. For midterm, we looked at the feasibility of on-demand transit or microtransit, as well as hourly service and expanding service into the evenings as well. So just to get a little bit more detail into kind of the system-wide adjustments, these are operationally cost neutral, but they will modify driver shifts. So there could be some potential ripple effects and potentially needing more drivers to fill these. Drivers are subject to a certain amount of time that they are spent behind the wheel, so that is something we do have to keep in mind when we plan for these improvements. And really looking to increase frequency at high destination bus stops, really important bus stops, as well as reducing looping, improving on-time performance, and again, kind of providing that seamless experience, especially if you need to transfer from one bus to the other. In our investigation of on-demand or microtransit service, we conducted an index looking at various demographic and land use factors to see where an on-demand service might do the best or be the most productive. And the areas that we identified for this were really east and west of Prince Frederick, as well as the Solomons area, and also in Chesapeake and North Beach. Really keying in on some population densities there, or linking areas to those population centers. And looking beyond the TDP, definitely a vision goal statement for this plan is hourly service on all routes, all services. Really being able to provide that seamless experience with a dedicated transfer center in Prince Frederick, as well as expanding Saturday service options. With all of that, we have created a conceptual operating budget where you can see the various amounts required for each of these improvements. Just as a takeaway, typically to add a new vehicle and a new operator, it's about $170,000, $180,000 a year, and that does not include the actual capital investment of the vehicle itself. But as you can see in the latter years there, that amount does go up due to the new vehicles in operation. Looking at anticipated funding sources, federal and state resources will pay for a portion of this, but of course, a lot of this funding will be locally sourced as well. For example, state budgets have really been flatlined for transit recently, and the federal money has come to meet that, but in many cases, the local governments actually have to bridge that gap as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And also looking at the capital piece, vehicle replacement and expansion. So the county already has a vehicle replacement plan in progress where you can see the numbers there. As a part of this plan, we're calling for 2 expansion vehicles, really to beef up service on the north and south routes to provide better connections. And with that, it really hit the overview here. The TDP, the real aim here is really to just improve services within the confines of the existing transit budget. We want to come up with visionary ideas, but we also want to make sure that they make sense. And they're also in tandem with other planning documents that have gone on in the county. So it's important to remember that this really can be an economic driver, especially in the local and regional economies. Transit gets people to work, gets people to medical appointments, it provides socialization and recreation. So it's a very important community asset. And These are the, this is the project team on the TDP, so you have our emails if you do have any follow-up questions beyond today, but I'll be happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you.
As I was, in the spirit of time, I'm gonna make this quick.
No, take whatever time you need.
Looking at the chart, the ridership chart, it looks to me, and I was trying to go through this, trying to find data points for total ridership. And it looked like in May, we were somewhere, May of '21, we were somewhere in the maybe 2,000 to 3,000 for that month. Is that individual or is that trips? What is our actual ridership and usage?
I can give you the yearly ridership numbers, and ridership is how they calculate it's a one-way trip. So it's
Okay.
each time a person steps on the bus is what is calculated. For FY '19, we were at basically peak, we were at 119,664. That's for the year, total ridership.
Okay.
And then we dropped as low as in '21, we dropped, of course, to the pandemic, we were down to 60,550. Now, as of close of fiscal year '22, so as of June 30th for this year, we are back up to 76,000. So we're still not back to 100%. Pre-COVID, we're about up to 64% of our ridership, and it's steadily increasing. So we're coming back, we're just not there yet,
Gotcha. So about 6,000 a month is what I'm hearing?
roughly.
Okay. I was just curious. Obviously, we put the money into it. There's a lot of people that rely on it, and I was just trying to figure out where that number was. Thank you.
So is the proposal for a transfer station only one in Prince Frederick? Is that?
Yes. So there was a feasibility, Sandy put in an application for feasibility study for this year.
So,
We have to
help me
restart
out
the
here. Why would
process.
they transfer? What's the purpose of the transfer station?
Well, the main reason, how our service runs is we have what are called feeder buses that come from Solomons, that come from North Beach, come from Charlotte Hall, they come from Mid-County or in Dunkirk. Those buses bring all the people into Prince Frederick, and then you have the shuttle buses that their purpose is to take
Around
those
town.
people and funnel them through Prince Frederick area, so you don't have the feeder buses that are also doing the shuttle buses. It's two different types of service that you have to provide that.
Well, where are they transferring now?
Now we use, as far as where we use as our transfers, Calvert Pines Senior Center is where the majority of the transfers take place. So we can have 5 or 6 buses at a time in front of the senior center or in back of the senior center if they're there traded buses, changing the drivers. So it's getting overloaded there.
And it clogs the hallways, as you enter the facility at Calvert Pines, we have all these chairs everywhere up and down the hallways, but they're there basically for the transfer. But if you increase your transfer rate, like you were mentioning, you'll have less of that dead time.
So a bus that has a route, north or south, covers a certain area,
Yes,
picks all those people up, comes to Prince Frederick, and drops them off.
yes.
So is there any benefit to having a transfer station regionally and have
Yes, there
Like a-
currently is a second transfer station down in the Solomons area, really to facilitate transfers to the circulator service down there, which goes in Chesapeake Ranch Estates. But it's about really feeding service. You have kind of these regional rural routes that come into kind of the activity centers, and then the circulator type services provide the service within those areas.
I just wonder if it would help speed up the system if we had a circular bus that did Dunkirk and the beach, and then met a bus that only ran up and down Route 4.
And actually, that's kind of what you ultimately want to have if you have the funds and the availability to do that. But we don't have that unfortunately right now. But that would be the perfect transit system. That's exactly what the perfect transit system would be, to have a circulator bus and then you just have buses that, that way there's only about a half an hour at the most, headways back and forth to be able to travel.
Since we're long and narrow, it'd be easy to figure out.
That's why our headways are so long, because of the route the bus has to travel.
And the state, at one point, was gonna subsidize a transfer station, but that money got pulled?
The project, basically because of the amount of time it took for the project to get underway, that they ended up pulling. It was all state funding. Yes, it was 100% state funding. They ended up pulling the grant from us.
Was that a one-time opportunity, or?
As far as that funding, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Did you say we were annually at about 70,000?
Last
Trips?
fiscal year.
Right now for FY '22, our ridership was 76,567.
All right. Do you guys by any chance know how many unique riders there are? Or is there unique riders? And, you know.
What's a unique rider?
A unique rider is a,
You mean like our
an
curb
individual.
specialized service
No,
drivers?
no. An individual. You've got 76,000 trips, but
No, there's-
is there 2,000 people that are making up that 76,000 trips throughout the year?
There's no way for us to track that.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You can track with ADA, like, our specialized routes, because
Our
those are curb to curb.
seniors are ADAs, we can track all of that, but as far as each individual person, whether the person getting, because a lot of them are round trips, because you figure a lot of people that are coming in, they're also going back home. But you count ridership as an individual one-way trip is how ridership is calculated. But there's no way to know that person A got on here, but they didn't get back on to go home, so things like that. You
All
can't
right.
track that.
And unless I'm missing something, which I probably am, so please help me. 1.8 million is what the cost of the program is,
That-
roughly? 1.83?
Actually, I think that's like, that would be the high number.
Okay.
And that, yeah.
In the
And if we
projections.
divide that with 70,000, that's over $25 per trip is what we're spending on it? I didn't realize it was that expensive. $25
Transit
is
is
what
not
it's
a
costing us per.
for-profit.
It ain't cheap running around Calvert County
Right.
country roads.
Right.
And we looked into it before, Chris, about, outside.
Right.
But because of the state funding and everything, you're pretty much locked into kind of how we do it. So it's something that you have to have. It's just one of those.
I really like the idea of what you're talking about as far as the on-demand, you know.
I mean, we have something similar. Well, so right now, we're doing the senior rides program with Lifestyles, and we're contracting them. We give them non-county agency funding. But it's limited, and there's an application process. It's not on demand.
Right.
But that's the closest we have to that, and we prioritize seniors, disabled, and it's for medical appointments.
So the bus that goes to Charlotte Hall, does that only stop at the Veterans Center?
No, it has all our systems are flag systems, so it has, that's part of the route that it travels, but it goes from there and then it goes to the food line, but anywhere along there, you can flag it down for the driver to pull over.
I was
But
just
it
wondering
does
if-
go there.
If we knew or could track how many veterans are actually using the service to go to the facility.
In order to track it, the driver would have to ask, because we don't have, because we have electronic fare boxes, so when they get on, they're putting the money in the box, so they really, unless we have.
You could
like
just have a counter and he could count when they get off.
Well, like I
at the
said, it would be
center.
the driver would have to
Yeah.
ask to know to
Yeah.
do that, but, I mean, if
'Cause
they
that's the
don't
reason
mind
that
telling us, then yeah, we
line-
could ask.
That's the reason that line was extended. I was just
Yes,
wondering how
absolutely.
much it was used.
Yeah.
Because
The
other than the
ridership
Veterans
is
Center,
not- Well, I can tell you what the yearly ridership for that. Let's see, the total ridership for FY '22 was 1,554.
we shouldn't be hauling people that were there to go to Food Line.
No, that's just where the transfers to center is. We have a direct
I'm
transfer
just
with.
making the point.
Yeah, no, we have a direct transfer with Charlotte Hall, with St. Mary's and Charles County. That's our transfer point, is that food line, so that's where the route ends.
We
So-
haven't been able, are they open yet for us dropping off people at Charlotte Hall?
At the new center?
For
Because of the
CBOC?
regulations, yeah. CBOC.
We wouldn't be dropping off at CBOC unless it was a request. Charles County handles, or St. Mary's County actually handles that.
But
So
they were
they're
closed
servicing
for a
that.
number of months, and we're not letting people in due to COVID. So, I mean, it's only been recent that they've opened that back up to public
Yes,
transportation.
they don't want regular route buses going through there because I think all their service is still appointment-based.
Yeah.
So they don't, unless you have an appointment, they don't want us just dropping passengers there.
If we could figure out a way to track that, I would be interested to hear how many.
For the veterans? Like I said, the drivers can ask as long as the people
They don't have
answer
to
them,
answer,
then
but-
absolutely, yeah, we
yeah.
can find out as long as they,
Yeah.
we tell them.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we are down to public comment, Mr. County Attorney.
Thank you, sir. The board adopted a resolution in 1989 intending to maintain the order and decorum of the governmental process. A copy is found here to my right. Ethics Commission has asked us to remind speakers of public comment that lobbyists include those who wish to influence public policy and speak at public comment and must register in advance. Floor has been open for public comment, first for persons in the meeting room who may begin making your way to the microphone, then those joining virtually. All speakers must identify themselves, whether speaking as an individual, where you'll be allocated 2 minutes, or as a representative of a group, where you will be allocated 5. Those who are joining us virtually, please use the raise your hand function if you wish to speak. Anyone in the room wish to speak? Please identify yourself and whether speaking on behalf of
Okay, my name is Bob Estes, and I'm representing myself, so I'm going to get 2 minutes this time. So in listening to all these adequate public facilities presentations and minutia, I'm generally in favor of what we have in terms of increasing those, but I think it became quite obvious that this is not a cure-all for controlling growth. I've heard some information that way back in the distant past, which is like over a year and a half ago for me, there was a way of controlling growth by setting a growth limit. And I'm wondering if you all are considering the possibility of marrying those two products or ways of doing things together to get better control over growth, since it looks like adequate public facilities isn't going to make it happen. Also, I noticed on the presentation that some items said there was a 6-year, call it a grace period, and some didn't. So I'm not sure if that's true of all things or just, things like schools. I'd also recommend a report card type of a document that gathers all of the trends towards adequate public facilities into one place, as opposed to having to search every little department's set of documents. Should be easy to put together. I think they're already tracking it, but it'd be easier for the public and perhaps for you all to use that as a tool. And with regard to stormwater management, while it is an adequate public facility, you got to make sure that you're using the current data. And I would recommend that the county perhaps buy themselves a few rain gauges and have them checked and produce your own data. It's easy to do, and you don't have to worry about getting data from who knows where. You know it's right here in Calvert County. How am I doing, sir? Pretty good?
13 seconds.
13 seconds. Well, in that case, it's good to see you all, and it's good to be back. And by the way, it's awfully cold back there. That's why I still have my jacket on. Have a good day, mates.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Bob.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room wish to provide public comment? No. Caller with last 4 digits, 2803. Please identify yourself and whether speaking as an individual or the designated representative of a group.
Good morning, or good afternoon, commissioners and staff. My name is Joe Cormier from Owings, Maryland. I'll be speaking on behalf of myself. A lot of good conversation today. I appreciate all the discussion about adequate public uses and looking toward the future. One thing I didn't hear talked about today, Mr. Hart talked about it a little bit, was about the bond ratings. And, I know we have to control growth and slow growth, but what's going to happen if we slow it too much and we lose our AAA bond rating? Is that going to cause, all our hopes and dreams to go up even more? So I hope that the commissioners who get voted in this fall take a good hard look at that process to make sure that our bonds stay in the positive light that they're in. Again, you guys did a great job today asking good questions about all the different parts of that plan, so I appreciate that work you guys are doing. And to the staff who makes all that possible, we do have the best staff here in Calvert County, so I appreciate all the hard work that happens behind the scenes. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. Mr. President, that is the last person who has indicated they wish to speak.
Thank you. Now it's time for commissioner reports. Commissioner Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was at the ribbon cutting for the Revitalizing Skin Studio down in Lusby. If you
Make an
don't,
appointment.
I need it. It's so true. It's so true.
I couldn't let that go.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything can be done with this, though. I don't think an amount of money, some new technology is going to have to be invented to help it out. But great place down in Giant Food. Met with her and her family. They were all there. Down at Giant Food Shopping Center. I'm sorry, it's where her business is. And hopefully some folks were able to make it out to the fair, even with the storm that seems like it won't go away. But that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Gadway.
Had the opportunity to attend the fair this week. Really want to thank all the vendors that came out. Hopefully they did okay, because I have never seen the crowds like that on Wednesday or Thursday. Sellout crowd. I mean, I don't know how they brought more people in on Thursday. Good job by all. Saturday was the 4-H livestock auction. I was able to attend that, and I want to give a special shout out to a young lady who is her first year, 9 years old, Lily. She raised 3 hogs, one of which ended up being the largest hog of the year there.
That she couldn't sell.
That one, well, no, actually the largest one that she could sell, she did, and it's on its way to my place soon. So, to see
Dinner
these.
table near you.
The what?
Do you have
dinner table near you?
Do you have a permit?
Daryl, do we need a permit for that?
Yes,
Yep,
Daryl.
two
Yes,
knots for yes.
Daryl. Just check for if you got a permit.
I also want to touch on at that auction, there was, to the best of my knowledge, it looked like 44 animals either went for market or farm use at that place. If you haven't been on one of those livestock auctions, it's really a fun time. You get to see the kids anywhere from, man, some of those little guys and gals looked like they were 6, 7 years old, and the goats and the pigs were pushing them over, but they were having a good time. The last hog of the evening, I don't know how long it's been done, at least for 4 or 5 years, but always it gets auctioned off for hospice. This year, Sassafras Farms donated the pig, and TJ and Colby Ireland raised the pig through 4-H. The hog was auctioned off, and it was sold, and then redonated back, and then auctioned off, sold, donated back. I believe 6 to 7 times.
5, wasn't it?
5 times?
Yes,
Give or
5
take,
times.
5 times. This year it raised just under $26,000 for hospice, one hog.
Wow.
And to put that into perspective, the last 3 years of auctions brought in $24,000 to hospice total for the 3 years. So out of 4 hogs, thank you to all those in 4-H that do all the work, and the local farms and businesses that help out with that. Over $50,000 was raised in the last 4 auctions for hospice. So thank you very much. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Commissioner Williams?
I just wanted to congratulate this year's Lord Calvert and Miss Tranquility, William Stanley, and Sember Lester, and thank the entire court for coming out for that event. That's all I had.
Thank you. So I too attended the fair, and unfortunately, every once in a while, the fair gets rained out. They were fortunate to get in Wednesday and Thursday and most of Friday, but didn't open on Sunday, and Saturday was not very good. But the auction, as Commissioner Gadway said, I think the crowd was just the same. So the people that support that auction come out, rain or shine, snow, sleet, whatever. As Commissioner Gadway says, if you've never been to one, you should go and get a bidder's number. But he mentioned, and I'm going to mention it again, that effort has been going on for 4 or 5 years, and Colby and TJ, I don't know who talked them into that, or if they came on. No, Todd's shaking his head. They did that all on their own, decided to raise that pig and donate the money for hospice, and it's got to thank Sassafras Farms this year for stepping up, donating the feeder pig to them to raise out, but those boys feed that hog, take care of it, and don't take any money for it, and all that money goes to hospice. So, and that money wouldn't have been generated without the generous bidders there that night, and I'm going to mention them by name. Sometimes people don't like that, but I assume, I'm going to make an assumption that they won't mind. But that hog sold 5 times to 3 people. So you do the math. 3 people bought that hog 5 times. And Rodney Gertz of Quality Built Homes, Mr. Bill Moore from Upper Marlboro, and Danny Woods from Dominion. Those 3 individuals spent a total of $25,000 on that one hog. And then Mr. Gertz gave the hog back to the Allen brothers to eat. So they're anxious to see what a $25,000 hog tastes like. I think it's going to be really good.
It's going to be one good BLT.
Yeah, yeah. But for all the buyers that are there, those kids, you know, Danny Woods from Dominion, that was his first time ever there. Usually they send somebody else. And Danny, I think, got hooked that night.
Yes, he did.
I don't think we'll have any trouble getting Danny Woods back that auction. And if you ever come there and watch those little kids and see all the work that they've done all year, it's not hard to bid and spend money. So I think almost all the hogs bought at least $4. Was one I think was a little under. Some of them brought up to $6, but had an excellent sale. And like I said, the fair was almost closed, but people showed up to support that auction. So I want to thank all the businesses that bought hogs that night and all the individuals. Mr. Moore, I don't know what he spent that night, but he spent a lot of money. And I had a little conversation with him because he happened to be standing beside me. And he bought every goat, I think, that they sold. And finally I turned around and I said, "Are you starting a goat herd?" He said, "Nope, I don't want any of them." He said, "I grew up very poor, and I've been very fortunate in my life, and I'm going to give back."
And he bought that, he specifically bought that hog, the hospice hog, donated it back, let the bid get run up again and bought it, and did that another time.
He bought the hog twice. Rodney bought the hog twice, and Dominion bought the hog the first time. They paid $42 a pound for it. So it was something to watch, is all I have to say. So I want to thank, I think the Allen brothers have aged out of 4-H. At 18, you're done. So they've already got another young man who's going to take over the hospice hog next year. So we are going to continue to have a hospice hog. So I'll try to, if I'm still here, I'll try to remind everybody next year to come out for the auction and support that. I want to once again send out our thoughts and prayers to all the people that are impacted by the hurricane. I think the death toll yesterday was up to 100 or over 100, and there'll be more. If you see the pictures of what happened down in Florida, it just breaks your heart. And it always makes me appreciate where I live. You know, we don't suffer from very many weather catastrophes here in Southern Maryland, so every once in a while. But for the most part, we live in a pretty safe environment, so you have to feel for those people that lost everything. And we're going to have to rebuild. The last thing I'm going to talk about is today we gave out our proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October. And just want to say once again out there, if you're a victim of domestic violence or if you witness domestic violence, we have lots of resources out there to help you and to help those individuals. It can be physical, it can be mental, but either way, it's unacceptable. And I know what to do if a man hits a woman. Some of the other things I'm not sure what to do, but we have lots of resources out there to help you in that situation, or if you know of somebody in that situation. And there's a hotline that you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that number is 1-877-467-5628. So it's the most important thing you can ever do in your life, to help someone. So I believe that's all I have. Commissioner Weems, you have a motion for me today?
I do, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
I like that motion. I have a motion and second that we adjourn. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. You all have a great day.